It is 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. And Superintendent, if you'll please call the roll.
Will do. President Holt,
Here.
Clerk Grigsby, Trustee Travis,
Here.
Trustee Wedge,
Present.
All right.
should we go with the last one? Trustee Poole.
Trustee Poole is walking in.
Yeah, give her 1 second. Hello.
Just in time for roll.
We're taking roll call. That's okay. Get there. All right, are you ready? Trustee Poole.
Here.
All right. Is there any public comment on closed session agenda items?
Seeing none.
Seeing none, it is 6:01 and we will recess the closed session. Plan to reconvene at 7 o'clock. All right. It is 7 o'clock. We will reconvene here in open session. And Clerk Grigsby, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And no action was taken in closed session. And I move that we approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Seeing none, that carries. And then moving right on to item 6, visitor public comment. This is for things not on tonight's agenda. Do we have any? Okay. Moving then to association comments, starting with AUTA.
Good evening, Superintendent Meyer and Board of Trustees. At the last meeting, I talked about how the district hired 35 new teachers this last year, and last month, this last month has grown to over 10. That's about a third of our hires that will leave after this year. There are also 2 admin positions that will be open, and tonight the board is going to be adding another admin position for the director of SPED. Our district needs to figure out a way how to attract and attain quality staff and then invest in them so we have long-term stability in our students. Next week is parent-teacher conferences for our at-risk students. I wanted to touch on the comment that was made by Trustee Travis about translators and trying to cut costs when possible. I would ask not to cut back on these services. Giving parents access to their students' education is a basic right. I can tell you it is an invaluable service that connects teachers to families. When they make the time to come to the conferences and want to meet with us to understand how their students are doing and how they can help. By having a translator there who can stop at any time to help parents digest information we give them and be able to ask questions at the same time is so needed to families to have an active part in this process. On the same side of school and parent involvement, something needs to be done with our independent study program. Maybe the district needs to have a position where we reach out to parents to get them to enroll for IS when they have trips, sicknesses, or for any other reason, so we can get back that funding. AUSD is losing out on lots of funding because we are not following up with parents and not educating them on the benefits of having independent study. I noticed that the trustees will be discussing the AV charter this evening. This is a huge opportunity for the district to make choices that could really help AUSD get enrollment back on track by possibly adding a homeschool program. This could be good for us to get families back into AUSD. The community definitely has a need. This would be something that would set AUSD apart, as we would be offering something that many other school districts are not able to do at this time. The E.V. Kane playground is still a huge concern. We, as well as the community and parents, all said it would not be done during this school year. It is not in the best interest of our students to not have a space for them to run around, play, and get fresh air. I hope by interviewing early, we will be able to hire qualified teachers and administrators for this next school year and give them the support to be successful for the next school year. Respectfully, Sarah Liebert, AUTA President.
Thank you. And do we have CSEA here tonight? Like we do not. So moving to item 8 and 8A, the Skyridge Elementary School annual update.
Good evening, President Holt, AUSD Board of Trustees, Superintendent Dr. Meyer, and AUSD community. My name is Christy Aday, and I'm so pleased to be here this evening in my second year as the principal of Skyridge School to provide an update for our school. We have our system. At Skyridge, everything we do is guided by the Auburn Union School District mission. We strive toward academic excellence, value and honor diversity, welcome and care for students, and look to develop the whole child. Welcome to a new kind of Skyridge. This year brought a significant change to our district and each one of our campuses. Skyridge also hosts our district preschool, so in the summer, we officially oriented to become a pre through 8th grade school for the 24-25 academic year. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Some of the words that come to mind when viewing this small sampling of photos are community, fun, belonging, connection, activity, learning, engagement, excitement, relationships, teamwork. The list goes on and clearly demonstrates our core values and the focus on the whole child. Without question, the biggest adjustment we had this year was the addition of grades 6, 7, and 8 to our school. Though none of us were entirely certain how this transformation would go, we put forth our best effort, and I'm proud to say that it has been awesome. I'd like to take a moment to highlight that there's no doubt in my mind that one of the keys to our year has been the flexibility demonstrated by our teachers and staff and their willingness to figure out how to make it work. They have come together as a team for the benefit of our school community, and their efforts have repeatedly made me proud throughout the school year. Our middle school students acclimated quickly, and the rest of our students and staff have often told me how much they love having our middle school here. One of our best additions has undoubtedly been our Falcon Friend program. Full credit to Christine Mayberry, principal at E.V. Kane, for the idea, where our middle school students can elect to serve in a younger student classroom for one of their class periods. These students have risen above the occasion, providing incredible support for students and teachers. And let me just say, the younger students love their Falcon Friends. We meet 3 times each year for our multi-tiered Systems of Support MTSS meetings to review data and determine next steps for our students. Student progress is reviewed by our staff team, including members from our District Ed Services team, our reading intervention teacher, wellness staff, school mental health specialists, classroom teachers, and administrators. This year, we began our process by reviewing attendance, behavior, and social emotional learning, and moved into reviewing iReady data, our district adopted program to track progress in ELA and math. These meetings provide a deep dive into reviewing the strengths and understanding the needs of each of our students. Adopted curriculum is in use throughout our school every day. District-wide, we're in the process of data collection to fine-tune our curriculum usage and ensure that all learners have access to appropriate, standards-based grade level content. Progress, not perfection, is a sentiment we regularly refer to for both our students and ourselves. This year, we've seen the increase in our reading intervention program from 3 days to 5 days each week has resulted in significant gains in reading proficiency. Chronic absenteeism numbers are declining, a key initiative since, as our superintendent often reiterates, we need students in the house in order to teach them. Our teachers do a marvelous job of serving our English learners, and we're excited to see the results of their dedication evidenced through the LPAC. iReady has been a significant undertaking, but our teachers are working hard to implement it and increase their data chat opportunities with students so that students have greater ownership of their learning. And our resource students have benefited from a consistent team in the RSP room, giving them access to the instruction they need and building their confidence as learners. While there is always room for improvement, we are proud of the progress we are making that impacts all student groups. I often say that schools are in the business of people. We are intentional to support our students' social and emotional well-being through a variety of resources. Having a full-time counselor on site has been a critical element of our success in this transition. Our Safe School ambassadors, Falcon Friends, and junior coaches provide students the opportunity to contribute to the social emotional climate of our campus, while our district and site programs continue to support all students. A significant initiative has been that of the adoption of a social emotional learning program for all middle school students, with toolbox teams of students and teachers meeting together every other Wednesday to grow in this capacity. Our wellness center is open each day, providing students with a safe space for a brain break or an opportunity to process through a challenge they may be facing at school or at home. Additionally, our wellness center provides classroom lessons in cooperation with our school counselor and lunch bunch groups, as well as other groups that address topics such as self-confidence, empathy, and self-control. These resources are invaluable to me as a site leader, as I daily observe the positive impact they provide for our entire school community. We encourage our students to contribute to our school community by showing positive behaviors that make our school a safe and inviting place to be. We challenge our Falcons to soar. Say it, own it, act it, respect it. We have a song and we have a chant in everything they do around campus. Once again, we will be recognized as a PBIS Gold School for our efforts. Each and every month, we take time to recognize students who have been extra determined to soar. We also recognize many students by drawing falcon feathers for prizes. Our middle school students have been able to use their falcon feathers for prize drawings as well as treat purchases every other Friday. We've completed several school-wide challenges to address data-identified behaviors with both individual and whole group rewards. We continue to look for ways to support our students and are already planning additional incentives, particularly targeted toward our middle school students, as we strive toward fostering a positive middle school culture. Our Larry Ford Garden program provides a unique learning space on our campus. Each of our elementary classes enjoy a monthly visit, learning more about and maintaining the garden. There's also a space for teachers to host outdoor class lessons. And this year, our middle school has been able to work in the garden through a service project time with their leadership classes. We're so appreciative of the parents and the Auburn Master Gardeners who volunteer their time to pour into Skyridge children. Many seeds are planted in our garden, both literally and figuratively. As you may be aware, elementary schools often see a high number of female employees on their campuses. Our Watchdog program, Dads of Great Students, supports Skyridge by bringing a male presence onto campus. These important men, dads, uncles, grandfathers, and mentors have shown up again this year, interacting with our students in the classrooms, on the playground, and all around our campus to the delight of our students. This year, our watchdogs also engaged, or should I say braved, our middle school classes, joining their classes as well. This program continues to be a success at our school. Our classrooms are busy places full of learning and fun. We provide support for our students at a variety of levels and utilize the MTSS process to best meet the needs of all students. Our incredible teachers create rich and inviting learning experiences for our students each and every day. I couldn't be more proud of the Skyridge community, kids and adults, for the hard work they do. This year, our students have had access to so many experiences. Classes have taken or have planned field trips to the Maidu Fire Station, bowling alley, hiking the canyon, gold panning in Coloma, the Bernhardt Museum, Auburn Gymnastics, Benton Welty Museum, the Renaissance Fair, Camp Augusta, and more. We've also brought awesome experiences to our students, like the Auburn Symphony, Blake Brandis's Growth Mindset presentation, Wild Things, and Ron James Choices. Our school provides so much opportunity to our students both during the day and before and after school. We're currently hosting or about to launch after-school clubs, including drama, both for middle school and elementary school, yearbook, dance, homework help for middle school, trekkers, robotics, chess, garden, and art. And this year has brought about the exciting world of sports at our school. We've cheered our Falcons on in boys and girls basketball, girls soccer, flag football, and cross country, with boys soccer, track and field, and girls volleyball prepping for this next season. There really is something for everyone. Skyridge is so fortunate to have an enthusiastic, dedicated, and extremely capable PTC. They host events through the entire year, free for all to attend, and raise funds to support our school projects and initiatives. This year, they seamlessly added a middle school color run to the jogathon that left every student and staff member breathless, covered in chalk, and full of school spirit. In addition to their traditional events, they've also hosted a reward glow parade and added school dances to provide an appropriate and exciting experience for our middle school students. They look forward to supporting our 8th grade promotion and can always be counted on for prizes and staff recognition and treats. Most recently, we held our talent show where we had 70 students perform, and it was amazing. Our school is a better place because of our PTC and the events they support. Children have a broad range of interests, and we're happy to provide exposure to engaging content areas both inside and outside of the general classroom setting. In particular, our library is continuing to increase material for our middle school students, and many of our middle schoolers now spend their lunch in the library, a special privilege just for them. Additionally, we have hosted many spirit weeks with fun dress-up days. I make it my personal mission to never miss a pajama dress-up day. Middle school rallies hosted by our awesome leadership students, school, class, and individual rewards for accomplishing goals, and of course, the celebration of a wide range of holidays. All of this is made possible by the incredible teachers and staff who work tirelessly to ensure our students not only are able to have access to the instruction they need for academic success, but who also understand that school should be a place that is fun. I shared this last year, but couldn't find a better way to conclude my presentation this evening, so I want to reiterate the point. You may have heard the phrase that people don't usually care what you know until they know that you care. This philosophy has guided me personally in my educational career and continues to be a driving force in my work as principal at Sky Ridge. I believe this approach, demonstrated by so many on our campus, has allowed our successful transition, and I hope continues to be evident to every student, parent, and visitor who walks on the Sky Ridge campus. Auburn is a wonderful place to live and to learn. We should all be so grateful for the opportunity we have to be part of this community. Thank you to all those who contribute to Sky Ridge to make it what it is. Our board, district office staff, parents, site staff, grandparents, local businesses, community organizations, and of course, our students. Go Falcons. Are there any questions?
Any questions from the board? I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
And next up, we have the report from the 7-Eleven committee. Just putting out there as a disclaimer, I'm going to be in here for the first part. Talk about the Sterling Track property. I'm going to recuse myself for financial interest. I'm not going to be and we'll.
All right. Well, I won't be that long. Hi, I'm Tom Dunphy. Nice to see you. Good evening, board and superintendents and community. I was gracefully tasked with the chairperson, I was gracefully tasked to be the chairperson of the 7-Eleven committee. And in the process of going through the 7-Eleven committee, we did review the enrollment capacity and enrollment numbers and student capacity for the school district. As well as we did site visits and looked at zoning ordinances for each property separately. As well as met many times in this very room to discuss and come up with our recommendations for each property separately. So I do have a slide, if you could pull that up. I don't know who might be able to.
Sorry, Dave, it's in the, linked in the agenda.
No. The slide just represents the locations of the properties, and so let me get those pulled up and go through. But my recommendations will be short and sweet and kind of to the point, so.
Great.
Tom, can I just, for anyone in the audience too, just let them know, we formed a 7-Eleven committee in the late spring, early fall, comprised of community members from a variety of different places that represent different groups. We met, like Tom said, I think 5 or so times over the course between early fall and now. And the whole goal is to look at vacant property and provide recommendation to the board in terms of what 7-Eleven committee believes would be acceptable uses for those properties given zoning and what they know is part of the community. So that's what Tom's going to present tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, this is it. So on the first slide, you'll see the location of the Rock Creek commercial property. It's just a little section on the entire Rock Creek school property, but in that top corner over off Bell and Education there. So as we're going through, the committee recommends that the district continues to own this property and look at leasing it out. or investigate leasing the property to create an income stream until such time that the district can decide what to do with the entire Rock Creek school site. Top recommendation ideas based on the current Placer County zoning ordinance are based on the desire to create an income stream for the district. Therefore, the committee has selected service uses, mixed use and or retail slash trade, and or retail trade as their top tolerable uses, such as leasing the land to food truck operators or something along those lines, creating a good little environment there and generating some money back to the district. Continuing on to the Atwood property. So this one is a little bit shorter, but it's a lot bigger of a property. As you can see, it's actually not off of Atwood. It is off Kemper and the Bean area. So Bean Road and Kemper. You can see that for the area it is in, surrounded by homes and whatnot, what have you. The committee recommends selling this property for the development of similar properties in the area, or just to get it off the hands of the district. Sell it in general is our recommendation. So then,
Thanks.
Now,
All right, I'm
third
gonna
one.
step out, so I'll recuse myself now.
all right, and so make sure he's not on there. So the committee, as you can see, the Sherland Track property consists of 4 different APNs, one large parcel, one residential parcel, and then 2 agricultural parcels. The committee recommends that for parcels 1, 3, and 4 listed there, that these parcels lend themselves to agricultural use, such as a school farm. The committee recommends that this usage, since the committee recommends this usage since the parcels are one continuous area of land to which the school district can devote a designated use. Additionally, in the planning phase, or if a school farm is not feasible, the committee recommends leasing opportunities to generate revenue, such as leasing the land to Green Acres or other commercial nurseries or local farmers. And then for parcel 2, the committee recommends this property be sold as a single-family residential lot and incorporated into the existing Vintage Oaks community. And like I said, short and sweet. Thank you, guys. That is anything you'd like to add?
Any questions, particularly on Sherland Track, that anyone wants to ask?
I have a question.
Sure.
Someone suggested that property might have been deeded as school use only, like there was something in the deed. So I just wondered if that
For which one?
for the Sherland Track property. I don't know. I don't know which specific one of the 4, but I'm assuming you guys looked at all of the deeds.
Yeah, nothing like that came up,
No.
but right to your recollection.
No, nothing
Tom
like that
or
came up. They
Jeremy?
were deeded
Yeah.
for specific use. I know that we did speak about the school district. When they own it, they have the right to use it as they please, right?
Sure.
That's what we had discussed, but nothing along those lines from my memory.
So the next steps in the process will be to work with legal staff, depending on what the board wants to do, to see what is possible. And it could be, several months to years to figure out, what the best avenue is to, remove those properties from our inventory.
I have a question about that. I'm under the understanding that when you sell a property that's a school-owned property, that it has to go to other like county or some other agency like that at a significant discount. We would not be selling it at what we could get it at
Market rate.
value. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was, sorry, go ahead.
So there's definitely a process for it. It has to be on the open market first, and then the public, if it doesn't sell, has the opportunity to turn it into something, unless the school district wants to, has a purpose, in the benefit of the school district to, turn it into a park or some other public benefit. It's really, up to the board. We have a financial advisor. She's not here tonight, but she could talk further in depth on that issue. She's investigated it significantly.
Yeah, I think I'd like to hear more about that before, at least I'd like to hear more before we decide on selling it, because I would like to know what the value could be.
Sure.
Potentially.
Well, I think unless you have more questions on Sherland Track, we can talk about next steps and then we can have Greg come back. Is there
Yeah,
anything
okay.
specifically on Sherland Track?
No, not
Okay.
specifically that.
Let me go tell him he can come back and then we'll continue.
Any other questions on any of the other properties as well?
Did you guys look at one question? I guess I can wait till Greg gets back because he can hear this one.
Yeah.
For the Rock Creek property, I love the idea as far as food trucks and stuff like that. Did you guys look at as access in and out of that property? Would it be, through Highway 49 only, or will there be access through what's that side street right there?
Education.
Yeah,
So-
education.
So to correct me if I'm wrong, but in our investigation, we did do a site visit to the property and looked at, the different areas potentially, but we didn't get as far as to look at a title report and see what easements are allowed or what's allowed to be built on that property or done specifically with it. But from when we were visiting there, the only thing that made sense for the access that we could walk upon would be something easily drivable and right through that same corridor that has all the parking in the front there. That has a bunch of other shops mixed in.
So you guys looked at what is allowable by the county,
Mhm, by
which
zoning
is,
ordinance.
by zone ordinance. But as far as, easement, access in and out, that's something that wasn't explored at all.
No, we didn't get that. We didn't get that information.
And that piece, the purview of the 7-Eleven committee is as a community entity to provide recommendation to the board on what the community would see as tolerable. And then likewise, what the community would see as not tolerable. So a lot of the zoning conversation that was had by the 7-Eleven committee was, there's 50 things that can be on this property. Based on us, as Auburn residents, we would be okay with, and we believe our community peers would be okay with 20 of these 50 things and these 30 not. So what you see in the report is that type of language. So for example, on I think it's the Rock Creek property specifically, it talks about retail trade. It's tolerable use and it's zoned for retail trade.
Mhm.
And the 7-Eleven committee specifically said that uses within this subgroup would be tolerable, except, and then pulled out bars, dispensaries, vaping, or liquor stores that they would say would not be tolerable. So that was kind of their task, if you will, along with looking at enrollment and capacity within the district as a whole with our existing buildings, to see, what are we looking like? What's our projected enrollment? And keeping that in mind when they're making recommendations. Are we going to need those properties for additional schools? Yes or no, based on where we're at.
Thank you.
That covers it,
Yeah,
Tom?
that covers it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tom.
Right. Thank you
Thank you.
guys.
So just to cover for the board, there's no action to be taken. This is informational. You have that to review. And we will return it to board meeting to discuss options moving forward. If there's anything you want to give staff direction on to specifically look into or bring back to you, we'd be happy to take that. And then at future board meetings, we can start to have those broader discussions.
You got what I'm looking for, correct?
Yeah, regarding how property would be sold and the process for that, right, Emily?
Thank you.
And I would like to start the process to move and sell that property as well. So
That would specific. that
correct.
we're talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, bring back what those next steps look like. Start discussing a timeline.
And then for as far as direction for the Sherland track property, is that something that
I think you can do that. I'll just, I'm not going to look at you.
You just don't participate.
I would like to see, what that would look like as far as, a potential partner with the district, keep it more of a, I like the recommendations of like a Green Acres or even maybe like a co-op of a garden or a community garden or something like that. What that process looks like and if there's any potential interest in that within the community.
So one of the things that came up during the 7-Eleven committee, and Lincoln does this, is that they have a farm where their high school students through FFA raise animals, grow crops, whatever they might be participating in for FFA projects. And one of the conversations was, obviously we're not a high school district, but we do partner with Placer High School for us specifically, and then Placer Union High as a whole. Would they be interested in anything like that? So that would be, we could spend some time reaching out to the district office in terms of Placer Union High, talk to them about whether they have any interest in that. and bring some further information back.
Great.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Are there any further directions or conversation on that? Okay, let's move forward to the consent agenda. Is there anything anybody would like to pull from tonight's consent agenda?
I would like to pull K.
Okay,
I would like to pull B.
Maybe I'd also like to pull J.
okay. All right, Trustee Travis, you want to join the gang?
No, sir.
Okay, all right, so less items 9K, B, and J. I move that we approve tonight's consent agenda.
A second.
All right, and it is a roll call vote. Clerk, if you'd call the roll.
Absolutely. President Holt,
Aye.
Clerk Grigsby, aye. Trustee Poole,
Aye.
Trustee Travis.
Aye.
And Trustee Wedge.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right. Okay, so Trustee Wedge, if you want to start us off with K.
Yes. Yes, so looking over this, couple things that really stood out to me is for one, this conference is the ones you have listed actually attending the conference. One of them was a principal that just announced that is not going to be with us next year. But that's something that can be talked about.
So what they might do, I apologize.
Oh, no, go ahead,
Yes.
Renee.
What they might do is just leave that space open for next year's.
And another one, I briefly looked at as far as what the conference, what's going to offer, type of training and everything, which is great. And is this something that you attended personally last year by yourself?
Actually, I attended it when I worked for Twin Rivers.
Okay.
Unified School District as a MTSS intervention specialist and also a trainer of PBIS.
Okay.
And we found that it fit very nicely with PBIS and they complemented each other where one is more where PBIS focuses more on student behavior reinforcement and structured interventions, and Safe and Civil focuses more on proactive disciplines, school climate, and then specific strategies for teachers, which I think is a need.
Yeah, and looking through it, and it looks like some great training. I didn't have a problem with that. But a concern, the money part, the $16,000 on. And with later on when we get to the agenda, we're going to be looking at some potential new job classifications, and I would like to see this. We might bring somebody into the district that actually is really solid in a lot of this training that can bring it to the staff. So that's that's something you can talk through, or could this be a money better spent elsewhere, or kind of wait and see, if we bring somebody in that is
Trustee,
solid in this.
Trustee Wedge, if I could, I think that's more of a question for the superintendent than
Okay.
for
I'm
Well-
just looking that way.
And maybe I could ask or add a couple of things. So Safe and Civil and PBIS sort of intertwined together, and Safe and Civil is more like Kelly was talking about, strategies of the what do we do versus the why and the how that PBIS provides. And we did participate in some Safe and Civil training this school year. It was voluntary. We did it all before school for teachers. Was it all before school started? Do you remember? And you went to it, right, Sarah? Yeah. So a number of our teachers went to it. It was voluntary. We had a really good turnout, and we had really positive feedback from teachers that it gave them the tools they needed to implement some of what we were talking about with PBIS in the classroom. And hearing that feedback from teachers, and the question being, what is this going to look like across our district? We love for this to be something that everyone has access to versus a voluntary for some process, was to start to launch this and train our principals and our admin staff on Safe and Civil as a whole, so that we can then start to bring it into the school, and potentially even as a trainer of trainer models, where I think is what you're saying, Jason, right? Of we start to learn these skills in a way that we can then train our own and do that internally without consistently bringing in outside trainers. So I think that's part of it. And then Jeremy, can you talk a little bit about the funding and the one-time funds?
Yeah, I can look into the funding that was allocated for it, but it is one-time funds that, we have to spend down those funds and they're allocated for, teacher training, PBIS, and those supports in LCAP and other plans that we have in the district.
Okay, 'cause that's something that wasn't necessarily talked about here. So this is coming from one-time funds that needs to be used specifically, for this.
That's correct.
Okay.
If you memorize all those budget codes that Jeremy does, you'll be able to tell by the 17 numbers he has at the bottom of the page.
I will work on that.
It's one-time money. Good question, though.
Kelly,
All right.
I would just like to add that I'd love to hear how the conference goes afterwards. That's my only ask. That would be awesome. I'd love that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are
Right.
there any additional questions on that?
No, thank you for the clarification for that, and I move to approve this item.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Or
Those
do we
opposed?
have to roll call?
Oh, correct. Thank you. So-
Absolutely.
Roll
Okay, so we'll
roll.
start with trustee Wedge
Aye.
and trustee Travis. Aye. Trustee Poole,
Aye.
clerk Grigsby, aye, and President Holt.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay. All right, Clerk Grigsby, going to you for item B.
It, I noticed that there was a name that I knew and had spoken with that was on there. So I just wanted to say that I saw your name. And I'll leave it at that.
And Trustee Poole, did you have something to add on that one as well?
Yeah, and it kind of ties in with Jay. I don't know if it's possible to talk about both at the same time.
Sure.
My comment is probably similar for both. Just it's more just a comment, just noticing how high the staff turnover is looking for next year. And I know that there are constant ongoing conversations around retention. And I know that, that money has to do with that as well and attracting staff. So just putting it out there that I know we're all talking about it and thinking about it. And I know our community is thinking about it when they see that as just a high concern that that we're going to have again another fresh batch of people, and hopefully they're really great. And how are we going to keep them and how are we going to attract them? So that's just a concern that I have. And as that relates to Jay, just looking at that salary schedule, I think a lot of our salary schedules are just on the lower side. I know we're a smaller district, but I know that we're trying to find that sweet balance of being able to afford and attract and keep quality people. But I know that's also a big consideration, as an educator looking always. I'm always going to look at the numbers, and I know there are a lot of people that are out there looking right now doing the same. So just on the lower side is all. That's my comment.
Well, Trustee Poole, do you have a motion for us actually, let's start with Clerk Grigsby. Do you have a motion for us for B?
I move that we approve B,
And I'll second that.
and we'll start with President Holt.
Aye.
Clerk Grigsby, aye. Trustee Poole,
Aye.
trustee Travis, aye. Trustee Wedge,
Aye.
5 ayes.
And Trustee Poole, do you have a motion for us on J?
Yeah, we can approve Jay.
I'll second.
If you call the roll, please.
Absolutely. I'd try and start with you, but I might throw myself off. I apologize. Trustee Wedge,
Aye.
trustee Travis,
Aye.
trustee Poole,
Aye.
clerk Grigsby, aye, and President Holt.
Aye. Moving to our action items. First, do we have any public comment on, I guess we'll get down to it, correction by item, but I would like to move item B to our first action item. Unless anybody objects. Okay, starting with 10B then, the grant approval for Skyridge. And do we have any public comment on that? Seeing none. Get right to it.
All right, Christia Day is going to come and talk to us about a grant for Skyridge related to libraries through CSLA, which California School Library Association. Am I right?
Okay, good. Never mind.
What's that?
Of Skyridge School. I'm here tonight to share some exciting news. Skyridge has been awarded a grant from the California School Library Association Northern Region. In late November, Skyridge was invited to apply for a mini grant through CSLA-NR. At the time, our library technician position had recently been filled by an experienced professional who quickly identified a significant need, an update to our book collection. With our transition to a TK-8 grade school, an area of need regarding materials for middle school students and many of our elementary level books was identified. Recognizing this need, our library technician developed a thoughtful and strategic book list, which I can provide upon request. This list includes new books for middle school readers, additional sports-related materials, which have been asked for a lot, and an expansion of science and animal education books to better support student research projects. Additionally, we see an opportunity to enhance early chapter books for young readers and to update library signage and posters to create a more inviting space. Thanks to this generous grant from the California School Library Association, we're excited to revitalize our library and provide students with more relevant, engaging, and educational materials. This investment will have a direct impact on student learning and academic growth. As always, thank you for your continued support in ensuring that Skyridge provides the best possible learning environment for our students. I welcome any questions you may have.
I don't have any questions, but I'm really excited about this. As a lover of books, the more books, the better.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's become a pretty popular space for our middle school.
I loved hearing that. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's been really good.
Congrats.
Are there any questions? Okay. I move that we approve item 10B, the grant approval for Skyridge Elementary.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Seeing none, it carries. Thank you. Okay, so now action item 10A. And do we have any public comment on that? Okay, seeing none, let's get right into it.
Yeah, this is CBO McReynolds, and this was an opportunity. The district was contacted by Pacific Infrastructure Construction LLC, who asked for use of the vacant property at Rock Creek School for a construction storage site while they work along Highway 49 replacing pipe. The district has no current plans for the property and would benefit from the agreement for $2,000 a month rent until September 1st, 2026. Attached is a facilities use agreement for board approval before entering into the agreement with Pacific Infrastructure Construction. After posting the agreement, there's a clause in there for garbage collection that the district would be responsible for. And we're going to look at amending that to, not having the district foot the bill for that. So we'll have, myself or legal staff review the contract to make the amendment and any other changes. But, this is a good opportunity. And, we were kind of knew it could happen, but with these 7-Eleven recommendations of temporary use of that site or a lease of that site, we recommend at this time to go ahead and do that. I contacted SIG Insurance, who is our JPA for insurance, and they agreed that that would be okay use for the property as well, as long as they had the insurance certificates, which they did provide me with.
So CBO, just to clarify, this is that corner parcel at Rock Creek that we just heard from 7-Eleven committee and no other part of the property, correct?
That's correct.
I'm not finding it now, but I do remember seeing somewhere where it said something about fenced in. So I know that area gets traveled quite a bit. Is there something in here noting that there may be extra activity to that part of the fence line? Or can we maybe note that in there that or at least just maybe let them know that it might come up?
So I believe what you're asking is, can the public still walk through that area?
Well, not quite. I'm okay with them fencing it off and to keep the public out, especially with the equipment in there. I know that it is used for many, many years as a well-traveled path. And so especially if we are going to remove that pathway, then are is it us or is it going to be them making sure of the fence line or activity around that pathway?
So there's a highway easement that runs along there, and the fence would go up to our property line in the highway easement.
Okay.
So, and it's kind of a hard parcel to look at. Right where there's a there's a sign, a roadside billboard,
Mhm.
and there's a triangular portion that goes a good way up into that property.
Mhm.
We could, the map of the location is in there,
Mm.
and I've included approximate fence line with some room for public or people to walk through that area, and some of that is not our property too.
Good. Thank you.
And I think, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but also there's some improvements that they would do to the property of their own cost, right? In terms of grading, which will take care of some weed abatement, fencing, and then also just having a presence in that area to help with the property safety. Positive thing.
And it'll make the property more attractive for potentially future leases.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I just have one thing to mention. I talked with him earlier and he said that he was going to amend that portion that says trash removal. And so I wonder if my other changes that I wanted to make to that agreement could be looked at that time as well.
Yeah. Yes, there were some language changes you wanted to make and a few content specific. Do you want to talk a little bit about that to the board in general? And then if everyone's
Sure.
in agreement, we would reach out to council to look at those sections all at once.
Sure. A lot of it was, just like some spelling and typos. I've got to be in my bonnet over that. But then in section 3, I did say at the very end of it, renegotiated the first of the month, or sorry, first. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing here. This isn't another typo. So. I think probably my main thing is there's some language about COVID-19 in there that we will require mandates enacted in relation to COVID-19 and other communicable diseases. I don't think we have any need for that in a lease agreement. And I would like to see that removed. That's in 2 different sections of this contract. I think it's completely unnecessary and it's actually redundant because you're saying executive orders and public health orders regarding health and safety, and then it talks about COVID-19. That's redundant. I made the suggestion that maybe we needed to have it posted that there would be no alcohol or tobacco use on the premises since we're going to have outsiders there and it is a school property.
That's a good idea.
The trash, and then yeah, most of the rest of it is just typo or stylistic changes, which I've already submitted, and but I think that pretty much covers what I was talking about. So if the board wants to address my issues.
Yeah, I had some questions too. Maybe we can address them all at one time.
Okay.
So this is mainly going to be used as far as storing and staging equipment and material, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, has it been discussed or talked about, because it's, they're going to be grading and stuff in and out, and it's going to create a lot of debris and whatnot. I looked at the contract. I couldn't see anything in there where they're requiring, any kind of sweeps in there, because that's something you know, as a district, we own the property. If there's any dirt or debris or mud, or whatever that gets tracked down the road, we'll get the fine for that.
So they have to have I can't think of what the name is called, but some sort of a plate that they drive over and a clean off area when they go in and out of the property. And that's required with the county office. They do have a SWEP for the project and
Okay.
that's included in it.
So there's a county plan that will include all that as far as your riprap and you know, and other means to control that.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Before we circle back to trustee Travis's, are there any additional questions to put in the mix? Okay.
One, is there any way we can get out of the deal of them putting a permanent entrance in there? I know what we talked about earlier.
I think it's definitely going to be cleaned up as part of the process, and it's the access is located off Education Street. So
Okay,
they seem pretty amenable to, you know, working with us.
okay, thank you.
Okay. So on that, as far as the COVID-19 language, I looked into some of that too. It looks like California labor laws have recently been changing on that as recently as just this last month. So I think that's something we make sure we have to defer to council, that we don't still require that language, because I think there's still some requirements for COVID language going to 2026. But if we just double check with council, otherwise, if it's not required, I don't see any problem in removing that language.
And the district will take note of that and, you know, make those changes as, you know, advised by council and, you know, take into, you know, account those recommendations.
Thank you.
And then the last one, trustee Travis, on the signage, I don't know that's something we need to put into the memo here, but
Let's see, where was it? It's under number 6. It just talks about, okay. No,
yes,
nope,
6D,
that's
it's
not
on page
this.
4, right in the middle, or excuse me, 7D. About licensee will not permit the possession or consumption of alcohol or the use of
Yeah,
tobacco.
that was just something I was bringing up as a question.
Okay.
We wanted to recommend that.
Wait, it's in there. So the question is, sorry.
If we want it posted.
Oh, signage on that particular item. I understand versus just having.
Just because when I am thinking of it, it's like you've got construction people out there and they're in and out and doing their thing. And
Yeah, we can.
I think it's more likely that they would not think anything of it and just smoke on our property. That's all I'm saying.
We can add that in additional conditions and that would be probably posted where they post the employee wages and on the job site.
So if everyone's in agreement, can I review the list or is
Yeah,
there more?
no, please.
Okay. We'll add the item or correct the item about trash collection and the cost not being on the district. We'll defer to council on the COVID-19 language, but we will look into that. It's in there twice. With alcohol or tobacco, we'll add something under section you just mentioned that I now forgot. Additional something for, but with the signage component, and then we'll go through for grammar and spelling check. Good. Okay.
Okay, now Superintendent, do we need to approve this and try to get these in as amendments? Is that the timeline we're looking at?
They would like to start this in April, so if you approve with the amended changes, we'll reach out, get that done as soon as possible and send it over to the entity looking at lease.
All right, in that case, I move that we approve item 10A, the temporary lease.
I'll second that.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Seeing none, carries. Moving to item 10C, approval of the revised schedule of board meetings for 2025. Do you have any comment on that? Not seeing any.
So we updated the board meeting schedule to align with another special board meeting for a board workshop on April 5th. So as a reminder, we did the 2 in February, 2 board workshops where we started looking at board governance and working on some things to align our board and make sure that we're all working together in the most effective way possible. And what came out of that was, well, many great things, but also the understanding that we needed a little more time to look at the governance handbook specifically, and then also start to look at the strategic plan. So the plan is to do that on April 5th, which is a Saturday. So it will start at 9 a.m. It is a public meeting, so people are welcome to come hang out with us on a Saturday while we work on a board governance handbook. It will be here in our conference room where we are right now. And staff recommends that the board approve the calendar with that change.
Are there any questions?
No.
I move that we approve 10C, the revised schedule.
I'll second.
Right, Ash. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Seeing none. Okay. Moving to 10D. Do we have public comment on 10D? All right.
I have a comment.
Well, let's have it presented first.
Oh, sorry.
So, staff recommend.
Sorry. The staff recommends approval of the transportation plan as presented. The goal of the transportation plan is to obtain 40% reimbursement of cost after reduction of the home to school transportation allocation for the 23-24 school year. The total amount spent on transportation was $403,000, which is less than the amount given to us by the home to school transportation plan. So we will not be getting a refund of the amount over that. But in future years for 24-25, we're anticipating to spend $700,000 in transportation, and we would get about $140,000 back. And so each year we have to post a transportation plan and review it with the board. So at this time, that's all we have.
Trustee Travis, you had questions?
Not really a question. Just,
comment?
I had spoken with our CBO earlier about this one too, I think. It's just kind of like, I guess maybe ticky-tacky language, and I would like to see it.
So there's a requirement that we have to approve it and present it. If, we can take into consideration and revise it with what was presented. I know Superintendent Meyer read through it. I don't know if she has any additions to it, but this was copied basically verbatim from our transportation plan that was approved last year. So there was no changes in it. And we put in the financial data and submitted it for approval. The risk this year, if we don't approve it here with the language, we won't get a reimbursement anyway. So I don't know if there's another financial impact if we don't approve the plan tonight.
Trustee Travis, can you accept the language as it is? And
Yes, I can accept the language.
Okay. I think they know you'll be looking for the
Yeah,
grammar
I know.
next time.
Sorry. I hate to be that guy, but I am that guy. So it's just what it
If
is.
you have a Grammarly account, cancel it. Just send all your documents to Emily.
Okay. Are there any other questions on that? Comments? Okay. I move that we approve 10D, the transportation plan.
Second.
All right. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? See none. Okay, moving to 10E. And do we have public comment on that? I don't see any. So let's get into it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I did. Good. I believe there was in the language of the contract. Mhm.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and community. Thank you for coming out for the 24-25 second interim budget report. And throughout the year, we have the original budget, which we predict what the budget will be for the whole year. Then in October, we do the first interim budget. And then the second interim is everything up through all our fiscal activity up through January 31st. And what we think the expenses will be through the end of the year, and then projecting out 2 years. And I'm going to go ahead and switch slides. So we're going to start out with the state budget because our budget is impacted by the state budget. The governor's 25-26 budget highlights he presented a balanced budget with 16.5 billion more in revenues than previous projections for his entire budget. Proposition 98 funding, which is our local control fund for schools, is at 119 billion in his projections. Now, the Legislative Analyst's Office projects revenues $9 billion lower than what the governor projects. So you have, you know, kind of a guess on what the legislative analysts who are independent and the governor thinks the budget are going to be. Next slide. So Prop 98 funding is a guaranteed funding of approximately 40% of state general fund revenue. And there's an increase of 3.9 billion in the 24-25 funding projections. One-time allocations possibility in this proposed budget. And what that is because student enrollment is lower in the state of California, there's a surplus of Prop 98 funding. And so I'll talk about those later. And they have plans for that extra money and how to get it out to the schools. So those are with one-time allocations proposed in this budget. The governor's budget reduces from the 119 billion by $3.9 billion. So he's thinking we're going to get $119 billion for school budgets, but he's underfunding it by $3.9 billion. And that might be hedging his bets because the Legislative Analyst's Office thinks he's going to be $9 billion under. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there, and we have to, you know, be careful about what we put in our budgets for the next 2 years. The economic uncertainties that we face, challenges impacting this budget are the wildfires in Southern California and absenteeism due to immigration concerns and potential federal policy shifts. Next slide. So this is a graph of what last year was in the enacted budget, or when they enacted it, and then what their projections are now in the January budget for the governor. So he's funding us, all schools in California, at $117 billion, but the Prop 98 guarantee is $119 billion. Slide. These are our funding factors based on student population. So the biggest change here is the TK add-on. It was about $3,000. Now it's going to be $6,000 is what he's proposing to fund that. And so he's proposing to fully implement TK this next year. Next slide. So the governor's budget is fully proposing to fund COLA at 2.43% for 25-26 and 26-27 at 3.52 and 27-8 at 3.63 COLA. And that's their guess on the cost of living adjustment and what additional revenue we would anticipate receiving. Students, 1.8 billion one-time discretionary grant of $327 per student. And what this means for us is about $400,000 to $500,000, depending on our student enrollment. And if they decide that they can afford the $119 billion, that could increase on that discretionary grant. So it could be, we just don't know at this time. There's teacher professional development in the budget, transitional kindergarten expansion, full statewide implementation in 25-26 at a cost of $2.4 billion and additional 3,252 per ADA. Since none of these are finalized, all these additional monies, we didn't include them in the budget projections that I made for the district. So when we talk about if we get these monies, they're potentially could be higher than predicted. Next slide. So this is Auburn Union School District. This is this year. Projected daily attendance is 1,291 students for the end of the year. Unduplicated pupil percentage, which is our low income, foster youth, homeless, and English language learners, is at 64%. Lottery revenue is $191 per ADA and $82 for restricted ADA. So what that means is we have $17,780,000 in LCFF revenue, other state revenues at $300,000, and other local revenues just over $700,000. The combined includes all of the restricted accounts that we have, which would be federal funds.
Jeremy, can I add one thing on the previous slide? Can we go back one, Dave? So just at the projected average daily attendance, it's important to keep in mind that we don't have a 0.83 kid, but we have a certain number of students, and then we have an average daily attendance percentage of how often they attend. And so what happens is if you have 100 kids and they attend 50% of the time, then we're receiving funding for 50 students, if that makes sense. So that's how that's calculated. Our attendance is taken into account along with how many students we physically have.
Just a graph here. This is unrestricted revenue. This is our LCFF fund. 94% of it is in that. The other state revenue is 1.5%. Other local revenue, which would be income and monies that other local sources. Next slide. Combined revenue. If you combine all of the federal funds and all of our other resources and revenue restricted, 71% of it is based off ADA. Other local revenue is 9.3%. Other revenue is 12%. And federal is at 7%. So we have a lot going on with the federal revenue currently, where we're talking about reducing that. So, at 7% of our budget, we could probably find a way to do some of the things if federal funds were cut. Slide. These are our expenses. And so these are items that are in our budget, items that we've spent up through January, and what we project through the end of the year for 24-25. So unrestricted expenditures total $14,073,000 and combined at $28 million. Next slide. Unrestricted expenditures. And what's interesting here is certificated salaries are at 44%, classified salaries are at 14%. Services and other expenses, which are anything associated with services, are at 19%. So we have a lot of contractors working. If we were to hire employees, that would offset that. It would reduce it significantly. Next slide. Combined expenditures, certificated salaries drop once we do that to 29% of the budget, classified salaries to 12%. And then when you look at employee benefits at 17%, that's that big yellow piece of the pie. It's a big chunk of our budget. Books and supplies are 5% and other services at 24%. So major contributions, the following are contributions from the unrestricted resources. So we have to take the LCFF revenue and offset our restricted programs. Special education is 4.5 million. It's at about $500,000. So this year, we're able to offset some of the restricted maintenance contribution with RDA funds, which are not from unrestricted, but we can use that for facilities. So that's going to lower our cost. Some of the special education costs have dropped because we're able to fund that out of our Medi-Cal fund. Next slide. So this is where we start to predict what the district position will be 3 years from now. And there's a lot of uncertainty in the third year out. Next year, we can kind of guess a little with a little more accuracy. But, you know, we're sitting at a pretty good position where we meet our, we have positive cash balances expected in 24-25 and all the way through 26-27. And there's a minimum of a 3% reserve that's required. And additional reserves for economic uncertainty are located in the other assignments in our budget. So the $4 million amount, that's reserved for economic uncertainty. And when you look at the out years, it's 3 million and 2.8. And so if you add together that 3% and the other assignments, 24-25 is about 17% reserve, and 25-26 is 14%, and 26-27 is 14%. Next slide. The changes from first interim are PCOE bill back from the county operated special education programs increased from 1,086,000 to 1,355,000. So that was a pretty big jump. Those are costs that we don't really have control over, and we have to be able to deal with that economic uncertainty. Special education director position and behavior analyst were included in the 25-26 and 26-27 budget projections. The special education contribution decrease was due to vacant positions and supplemental expenses transferred to Medi-Cal funding for behavioral services. Salary increases were applied to all positions in the budget based on collective bargaining agreements and Me Too. And across the board, it's about a 1.59% increase. Computer purchases for staff were added to the budget for the 24-25 school year due to expiring lease at the end of the year. And that number was estimated at 300,000. And just this week, I found out that it could be significant, could be less. So that would be money back into the budget. Next. So in conclusion, deficit spending from year to year is driven by one-time expiring funds. Educator Effectiveness Block Grant, which is one-time funds given to us 2 years ago that we have to expend. The Learning and Recovery Block Grant and ELOP funds. So if we don't spend those funds, we have to send them back. Multi-year projection remains financially stable in the current and subsequent years, and the district has a positive certification and is able to meet its obligations through 27-28 school year. So thank you. And do you have any questions?
So I have one. I'm kind of getting a little bit ahead of us here too. I think we can still address it here though. When we look further on down, we're going to be discussing the reserve percentage. and potentially trying to set that at 7%. So looking at things, still looking for deficit built in, is on how we're going to be able to increase that when we're already expecting a deficit.
So what's uncertain is the money that's coming in, and our expenses are going to be lower as time goes on, so that reserve percentage will, even out. 3 years ago, we were looking at, barely making 3% this year. And, 3 years out, it changes and we're able to make adjustments. If we have less students, that means, unfortunately, we need less staff. So, next year we'll be able to predict that third year closer out. Kind of the message with this budget is we have a little bit of time if we need to make more adjustments. And, we have to look at those, things that we can do to maintain that balance.
I also think to add on to what Greg was asking and what Jeremy was talking about is that time, and I say this a lot, like a runway is very helpful, right? So we're looking right now, we just were running our enrollment spreadsheets, we're putting out pre-enrollment, we're collecting who's going to come in TK and K, what new students we have coming in. We're looking at what parents are giving us in terms of which students might not be returning. Go here now, my kid's in 3rd grade or moving to Texas, we're not returning next year. So we're keeping as precise as we possibly can by grade level, by site. And then we're going to be making decisions prior to our May date to give to teachers in terms of assignment about, what does that look like, and we have some matriculation. Correct, because you received the money in 2022-3, but you spent them in 24-25. Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
So that looks like deficit spending. Now, if we spent those on ongoing costs, like salary, let's say, and that position goes on, that becomes an issue because now you're going to have to take those on and out of years. But if we're spending those monies on one-time things, it reads like deficit spending, but those are not continuing. It's a one-time investment, like a professional learning thing, like Safe and Simple that we talked about, or whatever it might be. Is that correct?
That's correct. So, in this budget, we're looking for authority to operate, the school at this level. But when we look at it, the computer cost might be less. Some of those costs in the LCAP might be less. And so in the end of the year, I suspect that we're going to be closer to zero, balanced budget.
Are we making progress on filling some of those contracted positions with our own in-house people? I know some have been posted, but yeah, where are we at with that?
Yeah, we interviewed this week for LVNs. We've had 2 contracted LVNs for quite some time. So just in those this week, but we can fill those in-house. We're always interviewing for paras. That's another place that we have for paraprofessionals for special education. And we're working with our labor partners too, to look at what can we do in terms of what you're talking about, Amber, to recruit people to come in for hard to fill positions that we've consistently filled contractors. So all those pieces are kind of spinning, and more will come out of that towards the spring as we work through all those pieces, and then hopefully are a little better off next year and thereafter. We'll keep going that way. Oh, and I should say the behaviorist that is in here is another component of that. So realizing that we needed a little more behavior support than we allocated this year in terms of our, we do contract, but it's with PCOE. It's a pretty reasonable contract rate, but that was not enough. So we had to bring in a non-public agency contractor, which is very expensive. And that individual has been fantastic. He finishes this month and he's no longer needed. So that will take that off the books. But knowing that we have that need, we want to fill that position next year with a full-time behaviorist that would be ours. And then that would overall be a cost savings and an AUSD employee.
Maybe he should make the jump.
I may or may not have talked about that.
I did it.
Yeah.
Well worth it.
Any other questions? I move that we approve the second interim budget report.
Second.
All right, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None? Okay, moving to 10F. Do we have any public comment on that job description for the behavior analyst? Go to it.
Okay, so the next few will be me talking to you about a few things that were just approved in the second interim budget. So behavior analyst, we have had a behavior analyst position prior to this year in terms of a job description, but it was a pretty antiquated job description. So what you see is an updated job description. It's almost in its entirety new and updated to align with what the essential duties and responsibilities of a behaviorist would be. Just in a nutshell, this would be a person that certainly would serve our kids at what we call tier 3 or high-level supports for students with special education needs related to behavior, assessments like functional behavior assessments and behavior intervention plans to address need. But then also the behaviorist position would support at a tier 2 level. So helping teachers to implement in their classroom for kids that might need a second dose or just a little bit more. And then in some cases, but probably less often than tier 2 and tier 3, also at tier 1 for those foundational pieces in class to set expectations and what have you, probably more of a consult role because their expertise is better utilized at tier 2 and tier 3, but certainly those safe and civil things, the PBIS we're talking about, those all kind of lump together and create a tiered system so kids have what they need early and hopefully don't progress to tier 2 or 3 needs. I think that's it in a nutshell. Yeah. Oh, one other thing I should mention. We did submit, as you well know, our community schools grant. We're hoping to hear back from that no later than June, fingers crossed. In that community schools grant application was an ask for enough funding for a behaviorist position, but this is one that we do realize we need regardless. So if that comes through, the funding for this will shift to community schools grant funding. If it does not, then we'll fill that behaviorist position and fund it out of the general fund.
I did have one nitpicky thing
Yeah.
on the job description. Just I wonder if you want to call it behavior specialist if you're not requiring a BCBA. Because otherwise they're not a behavior analyst if they don't have their BCBA.
Okay.
So I think it just if it's not a requirement, maybe you can call it something different.
Okay. We had it. So I will say we had it as behavior specialist. And then we looked across the county in terms of what other districts were using. And we wanted to align knowing that people are applying through EdJoin in a common pool.
Yeah.
And they were using behavior analysts. And sometimes the behavior analyst 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
And then a 3 being a board certified behavior analyst. But it did have that title. So I'm open to that. It's not to say
All
we
the
haven't done it
BCBAs
before.
are picky about it because we're like, if you're not a BCBA, you're not a behavior analyst.
Okay.
That's me being nitpicky, but I do think people search for both. I mean, I put in both when I'm looking and I tend to see more postings with behavior specialist.
Okay. And we can absolutely make that change. Like I said, that's what the posting looked like before or what the job description looked like before. So if it's the board's,
I don't.
if it's the board's recommendation to approve with the wording change, we're happy to do that.
You know, I'm gonna put it forward
So-
just as a
I have a question.
ambassador for my field.
Going forward then, in our grant, we're requesting funding for a BCBA, not a behavior specialist. So would that change or we'd end up with 2 positions?
I believe we just called it a behaviorist in the position and then the hopes would be a BCBA.
You did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Because it could be someone without it and they could be really experienced and just as good at that role.
Right. I just was asking to clarify to make sure we didn't get to a position where it would not be able to fund it.
Totally.
Any other questions?
Not really a question, just more of a comment and a concern. Um, I guess um, my concern would be is that, these next couple agenda items, we're going to be approving, new positions. And I understand there's some need there. We definitely offset some of the contractor services that we do. But my concern is with our we're still dealing with enrollment declinement every year, is that, in 2-3 years down the road, we could be too administration heavy, which we were several
Correct.
years ago. We had to cut a lot of administration positions. So I'm just voicing that as a concern. I see the need,
Mhm.
but I see just my concern.
Yeah, I hear you. So current enrollment, our capacity would be 7 administrators. Am I right on that? 7, am I by one?
That's correct.
Yeah, 7, and we have 5 administrators, 3 principals, Kelly and myself. This is not a behavior, the behaviorist is not an admin position, but the next one we talk about will be. That would bring us to 6, which leaves us 1 person open, that if we declined a little bit, we should still be okay. If we were to decline further than that, then we have to have a conversation about what that looks like. That'll make bigger changes across our district than just administration. But those are calls that need to be made, early in February by that March 15th date in terms of reduction in force. But we would be having those conversations early. Yeah, I agree with you though. That's true.
Any additional questions? Okay. I move that we approve 10F, the job description for behavior analyst, with the modifications.
To specialists, correct? Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? None. Moving to, and actually, is there public comment on any of the remaining 3 action items? I'll stop asking if there's not. So let's go to 10G, job description, director of special education.
Right. So we talked about this one a little bit. So we've had a lot going on in our SPED department this year, and we've been doing a lot of learning. And thankfully, all of our learning has come from a retired SPED director who's and program special at the SELPA, who is willing to step in and help us. She's familiar with Auburn and she's fantastic, Kara Peterson. And getting her feedback in terms of talking with staff and working through where we are in the district and giving us some recommendations. Where we are right now, we have some needs in special education that have to be addressed, and those are best addressed, we believe, from an administrative point of view. From looking at, we collect a lot of data, obviously, we have reports that go out to the state. Then there are things that have to happen based on those reports in terms of staff training, staff support, and what we're doing to then ultimately positively impact our students. The job description you see here again has been rewritten and updated from a fairly old special education director job description. But the goal would be that this would really be a person that's coordinating programming beyond, just the classes that we have, but our program as a whole in terms of serving students and hoping that we can kind of right our ship in terms of how we best support and students flow into tier 3 supports. So that may become less and less over time. And then we continue to have those discussions like Jason's talking about where's our need. But at this current time, it looks like we do need a little more support in that area that we would benefit from a SPED director. So it's staff recommendation to approve the job description in terms of position.
Are there any questions or concerns on that one? I move that we approve the job description for director of special education.
I'll second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? None. Moving to 10H, job description for director of student support.
So this is Kelly's current title. And when her job description came out, it was, I'll call it a mashup of the SPED side of the house and the general ed side of the house. And then what occurred there is that she spent a lot of time in the special education world, but some of the gen ed side was not able to fit on her plate. So we did some changes in the district office, I don't know, mid-fall or something like that, where I took on more of the special education lens and she started to take on more of the gen ed lens. And we did that to address some areas of need that we saw as really prominent. Christy said, we can't do it. I often say we can't do anything with kids unless they're in the house. So, we can gold leaf all of our curriculum, but no matter how good it is, if they're not sitting in front of us, there's not much that we can do to help a kid. And we definitely want to support kids and our staff to do that work. So we've been focusing a lot on attendance this year and a lot on what supports can we put in place so that kids not only come to school, but they stay in school. So we've been using our suspension numbers to really drive some of our work to make sure that those are down, right? So let's get them here and let's keep them here. The good news is our chronic absenteeism is down, meaning our attendance is up. So that's a good thing. And our suspension numbers, last time we checked halfway through the year, those were down as well. So the work we're doing is working, but that work does require Kelly to continue to focus on those things and help move that ball forward. I'm very appreciative of the work that she's done. It's been quite a challenge. She's been putting a lot of processes and procedures in place and then working side by side with site staff to make sure those things are happening. And we want to make sure that can keep happening. So what you see is that the salary schedule for the director of student support will change. And certainly she will still collaborate with the SPED director. And you see the term SELPA in there, that's special education local plan area. She will still be part of the Placer County office gen ed side of the committee. And then they work hand in hand with the SELPA side of the committee to kind of marry those two sides. So she'll still be doing all of that, but she will be taking on more of the work she's doing this year to continue it and keep that ball moving forward. I'll take any questions you have. Otherwise, staff recommends the job descriptions approved. That's written.
Not seeing any questions. I'll move that we approve 10H, the job description for Director of Student Support.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? None. And 10I, Special Education Director Salary Schedule.
So with a new position, you have to pay them. So you got to figure out what you're going to pay them. So that's the salary schedule. The only new position on there that we haven't had in the past that is on our job description is the Director of SPED. It's a slightly longer position than the line above it. That includes Director of Student Services as well as principals. Our Director of SPED would have a 5-day calendar, 5 more days on their calendar at 220 to help support in the summer for things like extended school year that we do for 20 days after the school year ends. There is also a slight increase in that salary range just because of the specialty that is needed in terms of expertise in that area. We're working on a lot of things, right? But we're also working on attracting people like Amber was talking about to be a good fit for the position and stay. So I'll take questions on that as well. Otherwise, staff recommends approval of the salary schedule.
I guess my only question here is about, we still have the assistant soup for ed services on the salary schedule.
Yeah, we don't have any intention of filling that position, but we haven't taken it off the salary schedule. It just still lives there.
Okay.
And actually, all of our school principals are now under the middle school principal title because they all serve middle school. So we also, the elementary principal still lives there, as does the vice principal, but those are also not positions that are filled.
Thank you.
But if we took them off and then for some reason we needed to bring them back, we'd have to have a whole conversation. So if they remain, we can fill them if we need, but there's no intention to do any of that.
Do we need to add Director of Student Support?
Director of, oh, you're right. This is off by one word, isn't it? Yep. It's Director of Student Services. That is, we should probably change that to master job description. So it should be Director of Student Support. So if you would like, you can approve the salary schedule with the amendment of Director of Student Services to Director of Student Support, and we'll make that change. And Emily can tell me about it later because I didn't
I don't know if I
proofread.
caught that one. I did guess the job title. It's like-
Somebody's got to, but yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, if you
I
could
know.
approve it with an amendment on
Sleeping on the job.
services to support, we will make that.
I move that we approve 10I with that change.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? See none. So that is it for our action items. It is currently 8:36. I say we round up to 8:37 and take a 5-minute recess. Be back in here at 8:42. I sent you an email with the contract. We talked about that. Thanks. Sure.
Set up.
Okay. It is 8:43 and we will reconvene here, starting right off with item 11A, presentation from Info Technology Services. Is there any public comment on that? Right.
I'm usually back there controlling all this. President Holt. No, I'm good. President Holt, trustees, Dr. Meyer, thank you for this opportunity to share the current state of IT. Each year we kind of go over where we're currently at, where we've been, and where we're headed in this next coming year. Our current status, we continue to maintain a one-to-one Chromebook distribution with 460 devices to TK through 2, approximately 490 devices to grades 3 through 5, and another 440 devices to grades 6 through 8. Those are just a Chromebook to student ratio that we're currently maintaining. And that was a board approved plan years ago. Digital citizenship curriculum. This is something that we implemented this a couple years ago, but we have a very slow adoption to this. Through some discussions this week, I'm going to be working more with Ed Services next year to deploy it out earlier in the year before we get into this testing and things like that. And one thing that came up was we may require them to complete it in order to have the device. So these are all discussions going forward for next year. Student content filtering, classroom management, and alert tools. We use Lightspeed systems for this. This allows the teachers to monitor what students are doing on their Chromebooks. We have the SIPA filtering, which is the Child Information Protection Act required by the FCC for to be E-rate eligible. So all of that is our security around watching kids and making sure they don't access inappropriate content. The alert tools are monitoring all of their Google work to notify us of bullying, violence, and so forth. Changes that we've made this last year is the reorganization of devices to support TK8 through all 3 schools. That was kind of a challenge for us. Usually all of our one-to-one take-home program is 6th to 8th grade. We did it at 1 school before. Now we're doing it at 3 schools. So that's a new challenge this year, and we'll learn as we go on that. We also had to make sure we had more Chromebook carts for all of the TK through 5 classes. And we had to move flat panel displays around from school to school to make sure all the schools had a flat panel display in every class. We have new support processes, more remote monitoring support, so we can take care of more problems in less time. We don't drive around town as much. And we have a new computer support technician. He's been with us now 3 weeks, so that's coming along really well. Additions and upgrades that we've done, we upgraded 3 main core switches for our network, 1 at each site. We expanded the surveillance cameras from 30 to 74 district wide. Hopefully we can continue to build on that. We deployed 380 new Chromebooks to replace aging devices. We increased our Apple device inventory from 40 devices to 100 devices, or to add another 100 devices that support special ed and Project Lead the Way. Additional email security and end user device management software was implemented to do a better job of monitoring email for spear phishing and phishing and staff impersonation. So we're doing more and more on that, as well as additional device management software to manage, to help remote support staff. We're doing a human review implementation to monitor the bullying and violence. What this does is it reduces our false positives. When a student implements something that may be considered violent in an email or a document, that goes through a human review process. And then if it's, they look at the student's browsing history and determine whether it's could be a actual threat, then they alert us through another channel. And then maintenance and operations, phones and radios, our department took over the iPhones management for maintenance and operations, as well as all the radios, Motorola radios for all the staff. We are doing some current implementations, Active Directory and Google account synchronization. This will reduce our account management, staff account management by half. Network security improvements are ongoing. This is segmenting out our operational technology like printers and HVAC monitoring separate from the student and staff traffic. We're training new ITS staff. I mentioned Mario. And we're doing more asset management. We're assisting ed services and implementing a instructional technology asset management. So we'll know what books we have, where those books are. And that's a new implementation we're doing right now. New infrastructure servers and storage. We have new servers to implement as soon as we can get those fired up. And teacher Chromebook pilot program. We have 5 new, these are Chromebook Plus devices designed for teachers. They're a larger model, they're faster. They're less expensive than a Windows computer. They're more secure than a Windows computer. So we have 4 teachers, one of them's here with us tonight, and they have been working with our department to pilot these devices. And then hopefully we'll come back with, did it work? What works good, what doesn't? And we'll make that recommendation for the new devices that we need in the summer. We will have to refresh all staff and faculty computing devices because of a lease that a previous CBO signed. That ends this year. So we have to give those back and we have to replace them with something. So we're doing all of that research right now to find out what's the best solution for that. We're refreshing 52 new wireless access points, these things on the ceiling. We have 52 that are aging this year and another, I think, 50 aging next year. So that's an ongoing upgrade. We're putting in a new fiber optic cable at Auburn Elementary to support an area that has overly grown with network and never had been designed for network back in the 90s. So we're improving that infrastructure. And we're going to refresh all the batteries in the uninterrupted battery backups to kind of keep equipment up in the event of a power outage. And we're trying to come up with a solution to refresh broken clocks. We put in new controllers 2 years ago, but now we have some clocks that are broken, and they're basically broken due to bad cabling that is old and underground in the conduits. So we're going to try to find a feasible solution for that. And that's all I've got. Any questions? Yeah.
When you say refresh, are you saying this is new equipment you're buying?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've got a few questions actually.
Okay.
So, are you able to see like our screen time averages? Is that something you'd be able to provide? Like, say our 4th graders have 20 minutes of screen time a day on their Chromebooks, or is that something you're able
We
to
could
track?
take a sample of students and we could look at that sample of students and give you a rough idea.
Okay.
We can look at what applications are using, how much time they're spending on those applications. Yeah.
Okay. If the board was to look into changing the 1-to-1 ratio, how soon would you need to know that in order to adjust your orders?
Changing it and so there's
Say
not
there's
1-to-1.
less, correct?
We wouldn't have to change anything at this point. In fact, we would take those that we're not going to use and they would be used as surplus and in some cases parted. Our department has been cannibalizing old devices that are partially broken to repair other devices, and we haven't bought parts in over 3 years. So we'll just keep doing that process.
Recycle center.
Yeah.
It would be a bigger discussion around curriculum though, because we do have some curriculums, for example, our math curriculum. We provide a 1-to-1 Chromebook and then textbooks are accessed online for all 6th or 8th grade CPM curriculum. So if they didn't have a 1-to-1 device, then we have to look at the cost of textbooks, which are very, very expensive. So we'd have to have a decent run of time to have a conversation around that. you know, and kind of get deeper into the why and things like that. And we can certainly bring some data on it. But we do have some curriculums that certainly are only accessible online.
Good to know.
I can add that some advantage of reducing the number of devices would be less cost than some licensing that we have because it's licensed by device. So that would be in it.
And we have a curriculum next month in April. We'll have a curriculum and an instruction presentation that Kelly and Kara are working on. And the three of us are working on together and they'll work on presenting to you. And one of the things that they'll specifically be covering is what are our adopted curriculums? How do our students access those? So it'll blend in with Dave's presentation. The goal was for you to kind of get the nuts and bolts conversation around technology, and then we'll link that to curriculum next time. And we'll also bring you the pilot schedule we have mapped out. It's about a 6-year pilot schedule that starts next year to get through K-5 and then 6-8, all 4 core areas, and when those are coming. So then you can also see when is the math pilot coming. So, you know, if that was a thing that ultimately we decide to move down that path, we would know when that math pilot is coming to replace the curriculum we currently have only electronically.
When we get that, could we have a presentation to make sure that it includes whatever instruction they get on how to use these devices? You know, is there, or do we have set standards each year? Like, do we expect a 4th grader to be able to take a Chromebook that's off, turn it on, log in, access a document, use the document, make sure it's saved, and then exit the device? Like, do we have a standard like that?
Oh, like
at different grade
a
levels?
practical technology standard
Do we-
versus like the digital
Exactly. Yep.
citizenship curriculum. Okay.
Exactly. You know, do we expect them to be able to type at so many words per minute by the 6th grade? When are they introduced to actually typing and not hunt and peck? That sort of thing. I'm looking at, you know, just are we introducing technology to these students, you know, the right way, or are we just kind of handing them the technology and expecting them to figure it out as they go?
Good question. Okay, yeah, we'll take that, and between now and April, we can talk about that. We have an ed services meeting tomorrow, so we'll go on the list.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
just had one more question.
I
Where
got
you
one
said
too.
human review, is that you or the office, or do you farm that out?
No, the company Lightspeed that we
Oh,
contract
okay.
with, yeah, it goes to that.
Do that. And then what kind of turnaround is it once they get an alert? Like,
You know, it's not as quick as I thought it was. In some cases during the daytime, it is very fast.
okay.
We had one case where we were alerted late at night and we started tracking down the parents and stuff. And it turns out that the actual alert went to them before school got out.
Oh,
And we didn't get it until, I don't know, 7 o'clock on a Friday night, I think. So yeah, and I just had a conference yesterday with a different company that provides similar services. And I did learn that in the current company we're working with, those reviewers are 1099 employees versus the company I just talked to yesterday, their human review are all W-2 employees. So that the data stays a little more secure, as well as the turnaround time is much faster. So that I told him that we wouldn't be looking at their product until 26. So we're with the product we are for another year.
and is it 24-hour review or that
Mhm.
just happened to be when it popped?
It's 24 hours
is.
is they monitor it. So if the kid does something on the weekend, there's a chain of
Right.
notification that we get notified. All right, thank you.
Thank you. So next is the reserve percentage discussion.
Yeah, this came up, and you know, I did some research on what the recommendations are for reserve percentage. And, you know, when I presented first interim budget, I went ahead and just, you know, put the numbers, the reserve amount for economic uncertainties into the budget. And it looked like we had 20%, 18%, and 16% in the out years. And, you know, that comes in useful when we're working with our negotiating partners and other community members, and it gives them a complete picture of what our budget looks like. And I sent it into the county office, and they said, well, you can't put that in reserve for economic uncertainties because you have to have a board resolution to reserve more than 3% for economic uncertainties. But you could put it in assignments because you have a strategic plan that says you want to reserve those items. So I'm bringing this to the board as a discussion to look at the materials I've provided. And one of them is the common message from PCOE, and it's developed by all of the county superintendents and state government officials on budget. And what they recommend, they have a section in there called fund balances and cash. And what they recommend is the Government Finance Officers Association recommends reserving an amount equal to not less than 2/3 of the general fund operating expenditures, or 17% of the general fund. And that's kind of goes along with what the strategic plan says. And, I've looked at it, and when we're presenting the budget, if you look at it right now, it's hard to tell that we have more than 3% in reserves. So what we need to do is, be open and clearly define the district's commitment to maintaining prudent reserve levels, authorize the allocation of additional funds for economic uncertainties beyond the 3%, and ensure transparency and accountability in financial decision-making. And this aligns with the county's recommendation to maintain the 17% reserve level. So we could have a policy that's higher than that, or recommends up to, 20% or desired. But 17% is what they're recommending. So, I recommend that as a starting point for the discussion. Does anybody have any questions?
Did you say 20%? That would be a good window, 17 to 20%?
It would be, and then we could show that we have those reserves for economic uncertainties. We would definitely want to spend the money we, earn in the year that we receive it on the students we receive it, but we need to be able to, position ourselves for rising costs, not receiving federal funds in a timely manner because, the federal outlook is uncertain. And just to, make sure that we communicate what our actual reserves are on paper in those documents.
So you're saying when we get, if you had done it this way, the second interim budget would show a 17% as opposed to what it shows right now.
Correct.
3%. Okay. So you're wanting to change the language to illustrate that more clearly.
We would need at the next board meeting to come up with a resolution. I can look into other options or possible resolution language to look into it further. So if you want to give me direction on where you want to go or how you want to, present the reserves in the budget.
What do you think the top should be? Like if 17 is the bottom, what are you thinking for the top?
17 is not necessarily the bottom. I would say 17 is a desired amount. In the out years, we're showing 14%, and that's definitely above the 3%. And what that does is it gives us time to make adjustments if necessary. So, you run the risk of, not being able to, give raises or make decisions if you're trying to hold too much, in reserve. So, I think the 17% is a safe number for desired. And then if we have additional reserves, they can be allocated as unappropriated, or if we have other assignments for them within the budget, maybe we're going to do a curriculum adoption or plan to do, purchase of computers. Those types of things can be allocated. But it's just a little, in my opinion, I wouldn't say deceiving, but it's hard to find that you actually have 17% reserves in the budget. So if the board wants to give me direction on on looking into it further, I would be happy to do that. I don't know.
Are there-
I would like you to look into that further. I think it's better to be transparent and make our budget clear to people when they're reading, you know, what it's kind of the bottom line is what do we have in the reserves? What are we using?
Okay.
And are there
Yeah.
any other questions?
No, but I think it would be worth looking into. Any way we can make the budget a little bit more clear, I'm on board.
I could look at resolution language and see if we want to present that next time, or how do we want to go about that?
Yeah, I think if you were to come back with resolution language, maybe just make sure you run it by our in-house grammar check. and,
Yes.
Then have it for us at the next board meeting.
Okay.
You can do that.
Bring it as an action item for resolution.
Yes,
Emily will take a look at it first.
before.
Accurate.
Yeah.
I'm happy to. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, moving to 11C. And before we get started, is there public comment on anything else in the information discussion items? Is there any public comment that we've got for the rest of the evening? Okay, I'm gonna stop asking on every item then. So 11C, first read on the board policy updates. And this is the first time we had our board subcommittee take a look at that.
Yay.
So I'll introduce it and then I'll let Amber and Emily take the lead. So we had our first meeting as a team. Like Greg said, it was great, I think. I thought it was great. Maybe they didn't.
Loved it.
No, so we went through the September packet. We're bringing it forward to you. These are the CSBA recommended changes. We're bringing forward to you tonight for first read. So as a reminder, this is just informational discussion, ask any questions. There were a few policies that Emily and Amber will talk about in terms of language we discussed, some feedback we want to get from the board. And then you can give us direction as staff on how you want to move forward on any of those discussion items. We will make those adjustments, bring them back to you next time for second read. And at that point, you would be approving, but tonight there's no approval. It's just information and discussion around the packet of board agenda, board policies. Take it away.
I'm gonna let Emily take it away because it was language specifically that she wanted to look at. So I'll let
Yeah,
her bring that
there
up.
were a few things. Surprise. I'm gonna go through it in order. We kind of talked about it in the notes as we went along. The first one, it's very hard to find where these are, but it's board policy 1114. It's page 1, very bottom of the page. This is a question I had that we said we'd bring it to the board, and it's talking about, I'll just read the sentence. The policy is not intended to create an open public forum or otherwise guarantee an individual's right to free speech on any of the official district social media accounts, even if one or more features on the accounts that permit interaction with and between members of the public are enabled. So my question on that was, do we have the ability to limit free speech on our website? And whether we do or not, can we just close the comments so that we're not held liable for this? This is about posting on our social media.
You said page what?
I believe it's
It's
7.
page
Oh,
8. If you're looking
seven,
at the
okay, 8.
attachments, it's the end of page.
Yeah, 7 is the start of the policy, and where she's reading is on, where is it on 8?
That's actually, it's at the end of, it starts under the blue box on the end of page.
Okay, thank
7.
you.
Yeah. Right there, right?
Yeah, I'm not on it.
Yes, no, that's okay. I'm following you, following you. And then we did ask, just, right, CSBA was gonna check, and we wanted to know if that language was a legal requirement, right? Like if it was worded that way, I thought maybe it was, you legally needed to state it that way if you were going to make any prohibition on what kind of comments could be made.
Yeah,
I just was uncertain about it. It seems strange to me that we'd have board policy about first issues at all. So that's why I wanted to check. And so I don't know that we have checked yet, but that's.
no, we haven't. And so the conversation tonight is kind of what direction does the board as a whole want to
Okay.
give to staff to move forward? One of the conversations we had, and this will come up in a following policy, or the AR that goes along with this, 1114, the AR that directly follows. that we would have the right to suspend someone, to delete comments. So the understanding of this to me from a kind of put it in practice perspective is you don't have a right to free speech if on our social media accounts. So if someone was to post a comment that was, you know, in some way talking about a staff member or mentioning another student by name, and we have an obligation, we certainly have an obligation to monitor, and we went in there, we would have a right to delete that comment because that person couldn't say, that's my right to free speech. You have to leave it as a public forum.
But does
So-
that change just because we say you don't have the right to free speech is what I'm asking. If we, can we put that on there?
I don't think it does change, you know, just reading the CSBA note there, I think there's saying, hey, this just helps clarify it because then we can more quickly say, look, we point to our board policy. We have board policy that says we can remove comments, you know, if it doesn't relate to school board business or school business. If it's harassment, bullying, discrimination, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
we can remove that content. And that way people are kind of notified instead of having to start the conversation from square one.
So I guess my question is, does it need to be worded that way?
Versus removing. So changing or
Removing-
removing?
Well, do we need to be talking about the individual's right to free speech? Can we just word it in a way that says we reserve the right to remove any content that we find to be this or that? Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Right, and I pointed out it could be, I don't know, but I wonder if
And that's why. I
that
think we
language
needed
needs to
ask.
be in there, right? Because there are people who would say, actually, you're violating my First Amendment right to free speech.
It seems like this is more of a kind of a broad brush too, instead of saying we might remove it for discrimination, bullying, harassment, and then they do something that's completely unrelated and we'd have to say, okay, well, we can't do that. Whereas this is just kind of a broad disclaimer, just like, you know, you go into the store and they've got the right to refuse service for any reason posted on the door, right? So kind of a broad brush, you know, the right to free speech, you know, this isn't the public square on Facebook on the school account.
Sure, so could we say that? This is not the public square.
I think
I'm
the way it's
sorry.
written is a little bit more clear, but
Might be, but I would like to see if like our legal or somebody could look at it and say, do we have to put it this way? Because I'm just. That's just how I feel about it. That's that I think that it's worded in such a way that it doesn't need to be.
So so the word free speech.
Yeah, that's.
That's your sticking
It's-
point.
No, it's First Amendment. Yeah,
It
free
does-
speech.
Yeah.
It's free speech. That's my. Yeah. So, I mean, if you guys don't want to pursue it further, that's fine, but that's right.
No,
That's how I see it. And that's my question is, can we just ask legal what they think?
And I can see how a lot of people, you know, a lot of people tie free speech to the First Amendment. You know,
Yeah, I'm just
Especially
saying,
that.
can we say, if there are things we don't like, we will remove it without saying anything about your rights. We're talking about our right to remove it.
no.
I'm saying
I'm
frame it like. it's up
I
to our-
I hear you. I don't necessarily see the
fine.
need to, but I hear you.
It's just a quote. Okay, let's see. So the next one.
Yeah, what number is it?
Is 114.
Okay, so just a little.
It's
bit
the AR that follows, correct?
I think
Okay,
it's the AR one.
So
and then it's
page
number
9.
10 on that. I just found page 3.
so then it's page 11.
Okay, on that one, number 10, it says a user may be suspended from interacting with the account for 1 month upon 3 month or upon 3 prior violations and for 6 months upon 2 prior 1 month suspension. That's
We couldn't
we were
we couldn't
trying to
figure
figure
out.
out where
Yeah.
that comes from and
Who monitors
what
that?
those lengths of time and those violations.
And
I think that's just CSBA
So-
recommendation.
Yeah.
I agree. That's totally a mouthful, but that's just CSBA recommendation. And so I think we've got the room here to set our own policy.
Correct.
Working with the superintendent.
Yeah, that was the discussion that we had in terms of, we could talk about what would be reasonable. So if they were interacting with the account, so a user may be suspended for interacting with the account for 1 month, meaning we suspend you for a month upon 3 prior violations. So for example, using a student's name, we'd take that down. So they use a student's name directly it's happened, we take it down, we warn them, we take it down, we take it down. And then third time that that happens, we suspend them for a month. So we would block them from posting on our social media page. And then if they were to do that another time, then we would now block them for 6 months at a time versus one. But the numbers are, like Greg's saying, I mean, they're a bit arbitrary. It just,
Do you think that those are good numbers? Like, do you think we should be changing those numbers? Does it happen often enough?
yeah. Well, right now, candidly, we do not update our social media because we have a lot of things going on. And that is not one of the things on the plate. So if you go there, there's stuff from last year, but there isn't stuff from now. It is our intention to work on that. Hopefully next school year or partway into next school year, we'll start working on that. Our right now, all that goes out would be anything that posts to Catapult and things like that goes to Facebook. Not many people are engaging with that. And, in past work that I've done, it's rare, but you do get people, sometimes. So you kind of know who they are, you're checking and
And
it
if
would
you
kind of-
suspend it for 6 months, then the school year's over. Maybe they'll move on.
Right.
Well, I guess my question, who monitors that?
We
That
do.
records that?
We do. So, for example, in our receptionist job description that we have our receptionist on board, Stephanie, now for 3 or 4 weeks or so. I think she's been here about that long. She's obviously onboarding, but one of the things that's in her job description is to help us with web related items. So she could look at some web page stuff and also our social media accounts. So she might be the person monitoring those. You go in on Wednesdays and Fridays and take a look, or a few days after a post and just read through the comments. We don't have, 5 million followers. We're not Beyonce, so it's doable by one person. Yeah.
So you think that how it's stated right now is fine for the time being because we're not using it?
I think it's fine. It's not, and I also don't believe that this will be a large contingent of individuals who would violate something like this. I would say though, if that became an issue and it became untenable I don't have any reference to go off of, but if for some reason it became very difficult or I'm like 1 month isn't long enough, we need to go trimester and then school year or something, we could certainly bring it back and update at that point.
Okay, I mean, unless we just want to start with that, just say like a user may be suspended from interacting with this account, for violations as long as the superintendent sees fit.
I'm all for nipping that in the bud.
I think, although that'd be great, I think the point of it is to be clear with people on what the consequence would be prior to the
Okay.
offense. So I think we should put some
Okay,
number language around it. But I would tell you if it becomes an issue.
okay.
I mean, I'm the one who's gonna tell them they're suspended, and then if it becomes an issue, we can adjust it.
And then this. This is the one you choose.
I think that's more toward the end.
5144.1. Is that the one we're on now?
Is that the one you changed the language on?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's more toward the end. Scroll to it and I'll tell you what page. Okay, so it starts on page 34, but the part we're going to be looking at is, let's see, 35. Oh, yep.
Right below the blue box.
Yep.
Is that right?
37.
Yeah, so first blue box on that page, Superintendent Meyer rewrote the language on that. Which I'm mostly happy with. Basically changing it from a restorative justice practice suitable to the needs of students. Now it just says restorative practice suitable to the needs of the student, and then I don't know if you guys want me to.
Maybe we should
this
read, I
entire
think,
thing.
I think read the whole thing.
No,
Yeah.
read it.
Okay, so do you want me to read how it did say and now what it does say, or?
I mean, we could, but essentially it was just broad language that was CSBA recommendation. And then we aligned it to what we actually do in Auburn and used language that people would be familiar with.
So
So
this will be the language that we're
Mhm.
changing it to.
Yeah, so why don't you read the one
And
that
what
we
page are we on? I'm not
adjusted?
finding it. You said 37 in the packet, right?
30, I think it's 30.
It's, yeah, 5144, and then it's under item 17. So it's page 4 once you get to the 5144 or whatever it is. There you go.
It says, when a student has been suspended or other means of correction have been implemented against the student for an incident of racist bullying, harassment, or intimidation, the principal or designee may, as appropriate, engage both the victim and the perpetrator in a restorative practice suitable to the needs of the students, including but not limited to mediation with the principal or designee. To address individual needs, the principal or designee may also conduct check-ins with the victim and have the perpetrator engage in restorative practices focused on prevention and education, including but not limited to counseling support, conflict management, and or cultural sensitivity training.
Cultural sensitivity, education.
Education. Oh, I don't know where I got training, education.
Okay.
I think there used to be something in there about training. That's why, yeah.
So I mostly concur with that. I still, I don't necessarily think that we need to call it restorative practice. Does anybody else have any input into this before I get into it?
Can I talk to you a little bit about the language we use?
Yes.
So we would do things like a mediation, a restorative circle, a restorative practice. That's common language like a counselor or mental health specialist might use with students. So say that, middle school students were in the cafeteria, someone made a comment to another student that was upsetting and potentially racial in nature, and that student says, "Oh, that wasn't my intention. I was joking around." That, and that happens often with,
Right.
12, 13-year-old kids. They say something off the cuff. And so usually there's a conversation, typically with the principal, with that student who said whatever the thing is, talk to me about it. How do you think that other person felt, kind of using some empathy, put yourself in their shoes. And then ultimately talking to the other kid on the other side who had something said to them to say, what would help you move forward. So we usually try to ask that student, not dictate to them what happens. They sometimes will say, and being a principal, this happens, like, I would like them to apologize. I'd like to talk about it. And so if that's the case, then the kids would get together and they would talk with an adult as a mediator to say, please, explain your side. Okay, now you explain your side. How do you, how does that make you feel when that person talks to you that way? And then they kind of work through it together, come up with making amends typically. And then how are we going to move forward? 9 times out of 10, that works great, and we never see an issue again. If we do, then potentially that moves to a disciplinary side now because we're in the process of education, right? That's our goal. So we always want to help kids improve and be good citizens when they go out into the world. So if it continues though, then we would look at potential discipline up to and including suspension. And so if that was to go under, say, bullying, which is 48 900R in the ed code, you have to identify what type of bullying it is. There's 3 different types. And you cannot suspend for that unless there's been what's called an alternative means, like what I just described, prior to suspending. So this language is also to say, we're doing that education piece first prior to the disciplinary action. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But questions?
No, I think I'm satisfied with
No,
that.
yeah, I like it.
Next.
Um, so I don't think we discussed this one before.
I was gonna say, I thought that was all.
Thing, but so there are some, like one policy at least is like optional on here. We didn't discuss that when we were sitting.
Which
in
one?
Let's see, the use of student technology, 6163.4. Like that one is an optional paragraph and we didn't I don't think, discuss optional ones, whether or not we wanted to keep those in. I think we just went through it like, oh yeah, this is
61. Sorry, tell me the number again.
61, 63, it's page 85. In the, if you're looking on a PDF.
The student use of technology.
It's like this, it's the second blue section.
Oh,
I'm
there's
not-
an
I'm not s-
optional section in there. you're saying.
Yeah,
Did anyone find the page?
It's page 86, but it's it's page 2 of that section. Is it this box?
Oh, yeah, okay, right
Following
in the middle.
optional paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is for use by districts that have adopted a program pursuant to Ed Code 49073.6 to gather and maintain information from students' social media activity that pertains directly to school safety or student safety. Districts that choose to adopt such a program must comply with specified notification and program requirements. See Board Policy 5125, student records. Is that something that we do?
Okay, hold on. I just found-
Oh, yeah, that's good. I know they do in the high school.
I'm using this one as an example. I didn't actually go through to see whether or not we had checked all the optional boxes or not. And so I'm just saying this one's optional. We had not discussed that between the three of us, so
Yeah,
I guess we're bringing.
It looks like we have a Board Policy 5125.
we do. We certainly have that one. The question is, do we have a program pursuant to Ed Code 4907D3.6? So I have to read that. So what I can do is I can read through that Ed Code and then we can bring it back for discussion during second read. Does that
Perfect.
sound reasonable?
And then along the same lines, if one of the three of us notice the
Yeah.
optional ones, I think we need to pull those out and look at them as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought they were designated on there as optional.
I
See?
think what
Well,
we looked for is
Somehow.
the overall,
But
the
I think-
policy is optional.
But
But I think what Emily's saying, and I haven't looked at this either, is each blue box may indicate there's a portion that's
Sure.
optional.
Sure.
And one thing that we are automatically doing is that anything that comes 912 only, we pull that out. So there will be language removed if it only applies to high school, because we don't have high school. So that we're already doing, but now we can keep track of the options.
Okay, I've got language nitpick I'd like to bring up. I also just got my computer back from getting a new hard drive, so I don't know what page I'm on anything because I don't know how to turn that back on. So sorry, I lost
What
lots of
number?
things.
Finding this
Yeah,
one.
it is. Hold on. I'm scrolling up to tell you what number it's under. It's towards the end of that number. It's under the ground, under 5144.1. But towards the end, but it's about the homeless things. Let me get to it.
5144.
is suspension.
Yep. So underneath that, it's under 5. So page 8, page 9 under that section. What it looks like.
Fifty-one forty-four.
5144.1. That page 8.
Is it the reg or the B?
The, oh gosh. I think it's the BP. I gotta scroll up to find out. It's the reg. It's the reg.
Okay, what page? What
Page 8. And it may pop up in other places as well.
In a box or-
It is a number. It's actually it's page 9. Sorry, page 9. So it's under 5, item D. Just the language here, it's kind of that euphemism treadmill. So if the student involved is a child or youth experiencing homelessness, the superintendent or designee shall notify the district liaison for homeless students. I'd just like to change that to if the instead of saying, is a child or youth experiencing homelessness, just homeless student. Seems like we can accomplish with 2 words, what we used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words for.
So I'll tell you why they write it that way. We try to use person first language. So like we say like a student or a child with a disability to say they're a child first, they're a student first, they happen to have a disability. So this would be a child or a student, they happen to be homeless instead of letting homeless be the qualifier. But that's why you'll see that.
Right. No,
throughout, but-
I understand exactly where that's coming from. It's that kind of a euphemism treadmill where we just kind of keep reinventing new things.
Yeah.
So if we just keep that as, I think, homeless student, that'd be my,
Well, at the end of the student,
That is.
at the, no, at the end of the sentence, it actually says
It
homeless
does.
student.
It says
So
homeless
just
Oh,
let's
it does
use
say the same thing. I see what you're
language.
saying. So just
Yeah.
make it match.
Make
Correct.
It's already
Same
in there.
language.
Yeah. And I think that does it in another spot in here too, but
Yeah, it does.
Page 9.
It does
I
on
needed you
page
to take some
13
notes
as
because I'm
well.
taking notes too, but I'm gonna need help when I try to find that again. Okay, homeless student, page 9.
email it to you. So I already copied it.
You can
I
actually
think I
do a
got it.
word search within the document.
Yeah.
and find
Yeah.
it.
I think
Yeah.
I got it, but okay. We got
Okay.
2 things we gotta work on with that.
Okay. Thanks.
Oh, and the only other one, we didn't talk about it, but I'll bring your attention to it because this is an optional adoption policy. Is 5147. Which is probably slightly down. Dropout prevention. So this has to do with students obviously dropping out, but it's referring to graduation. So this is mainly a high school policy. But keeping in mind that we're matriculating kids on to high school and obviously want to keep them in school, it is optional for the board to put this policy in place or not.
Yeah, it looks like we currently do not have this as a policy.
So it
So-
would be adding it. So just think about that at second read, bring back your thoughts, and we'll have a conversation about that one at that point. Great. That's okay.
All right, all set.
Also.
So we actually need to pull 11D. I had to say that a little earlier on. So moving to 11E, facilities update.
So the biggest project that we have coming up is EB Kane playground updates. And so the changes are being made by the architect, and we had a first read of the architect plan last week. And it looks like they're going to be finished at the end of March, and we will have that submitted to DSA for approval of the final plan. And then hopefully we can get started with construction in May or June.
Great.
The Auburn Elementary shade structure is in and complete. It's just awaiting final inspection. I went out for the final or the initial walkthrough, and there's some pavement corrections that need to be made, but it's in its entirety, it's complete and up. We just have to get the final walkthrough on that after they make the last few changes. And then we allocated some funds in the budget for additional improvements at Skyridge Elementary School for a shade structure, since they didn't get one at this last round when we were trying to make those improvements. So, we will have those come up in the next 2 months at the board meetings for approval.
Great. Thank you. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. Move to 11F, the Alta Vista Community Charter School discussion.
So Alta Vista Charter, we still have the charter that's in play, if you will. There's no students allocated to it, there's no staff, but we do still have the charter. It doesn't come up for renewal until June 2028, but almost 2 years ago, the board had discussed at a meeting and talked about revisiting the charter 2 years from then, which would be this June 2025. We assume as staff that you'll want some information, that you want to have a discussion about what you want to do with the charter. There's some options, right? Maybe you want us to look into changing that charter to be something different. And you want feedback from us on what that might look like. And if that's possible in our recommendation, you could look at leaving it just as is, and it would remain sort of there's no technical term. It's just sort of in limbo, and we could talk to you about what that means for us and what we do annually for that in terms of just leaving it as is. And then a third option might be to suspend the charter. Is that the right word? Suspend? I think that's the word she used.
Revoke.
A revoke. Well, it means revoke, but I think it was a word that didn't that didn't sound like revoke, but it means revoke, which essentially would be collapsing the charter and making that decision, what that entails and all of that. So we basically just wanted to open the discussion so that we had knowledge as staff as to what you might want. And we have some lead time to get those pieces to you so that you have the time you need to make an informed decision in June. And again, that's a self-imposed deadline of June 2025, but it is coming up. So
I think I asked you this before, and I can't remember if you had an answer or not, because it was a while ago, but very curious about the potential for it to be a home study charter and I want to know what keeping it as a charter, keeping the charter and what kind of revenue the district would get from something like that. But then specifically, because we lose so many students to home study charters, would there be a benefit to having that become a home study charter? And then we can keep and maybe even get back those students who have gone to those.
is that something the board as a whole is interested in? We could put together some
Yeah, I
information
would
to
be
bring
interested
to
in
you.
that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So then that would be, what would it look like to have a home study charter? What we'll have to do, it might take us a little time here, but we now have a contact at CDE we can reach out to. We'd have to ask them what that would entail, because obviously we'd have to rewrite that charter. And then the question would be, is that possible? Would you allow us to amend it at this point, or no, or what's their answer? And then if so, what's the process look like? So we could start there and then bring some of that info back.
I guess I would be most interested in your recommendation. So in April 5th, we're gonna be discussing as a board, going over our governance handbook, some strategic goals. I'd be curious if you would feel that after we do that, would a home study charter, would this charter period, would that support those goals? So I just want to hear your clear feedback from it after we get some of this resolved.
Sure.
And if I can kind of chime in, the last CSBA conference, I did attend one of the seminars on charters.
Yeah.
And I was talking to the presenter afterwards, and I've heard this before, but it was confirmed also at this, for a second time, is that right now in the state of California, they're not issuing any new charters for non-classroom base. And but with our charter, it's called a material revision. We can do a simple material revision, which is very easy to do, what I've been told, and we can change that and rewrite it into a non-classroom base. Not saying that's the direction we should go, but you brought up a good point. We've lost a lot of students in our district to homeschooling or some kind of hybrid or something like that, and this could be an option to get those students back into the district. So I think it's well worth looking into, investigating, and see what our options are. And because I think, it could be potential to get families back into the district, that may not want to, attend, a brick and mortar.
Seat-based school.
Yeah.
Well, we can certainly do that, and we can also bring you information we'll certainly provide you with our recommendation. We'll do some digging into what that would entail. Obviously, part of our presentation, just to front load everyone too, will be what's the workload in terms of that, right? So charters, when they're dependent, typically in my experience, they function as their own LEA, which means all those reporting requirements that we do for Auburn Union School District, we would then do for the charter as well. So it's not that that's impossible. It's just that that's additional work on the existing team. So if we were to have someone come in and do some of that work, then that adds cost as well. So it'll take us a little time, but just to let you know, those are the pieces we would put together and bring to you. If there's anything else beyond that that you think we're missing, then
Yeah.
let me know.
So
Okay.
if I could real quick, so I'm not opposed to getting information, but I generally am opposed to trying to bring this back, even as a home study charter. I feel like we've lost a lot of families, yes, but I think most of the families we lose are more for values reasons and perceived mistrust, or they just don't trust what comes out of Sacramento. So my take is that we try to be very good at in-person instruction, and we provide that service to the community, that opportunity to the community. There are many home study charters out there, all sorts of programs. My take is that we try to focus really well on this, which is a traditional brick and mortar school. And we do that well, and we provide that for the people in our community looking for it. We're never going to get back to the number of students that we had 20 years ago. We never will, unless there's a huge influx of people and we build all sorts of things. It's not going to happen because we're never going to put the genie back in the bottle of charter schools and the explosion of home study programs and online-based learning. So that's where I'm at on it. I feel like we should just really commit our resources to brick and mortar and focus on that.
Yeah.
Along those lines, sorry, I have one quick question. You were talking about a dependent charter. Is there an independent one where somebody else manages all of the things that you were talking about?
Well, yes, but that's not what ours is. So
So I'm saying, could we convert ours to that in the same way he's saying we could do material revision?
I don't believe so. Someone would have to take it. So like John Adams is an independent charter.
Oh, okay.
So they do all their own staffing, things like that, but they're linked to a school district who kind of looks over, their special education implementation,
Right.
that kind of thing. That would be an independent charter. Alta Vista was always written as a dependent charter as part of AUSD, and therefore utilizes the services of our district office and then serve the charter.
And then is there some benefit to a district having it?
Well, I think the benefit are the things that you're talking about, like the options that it would bring to families, right? What happens is it functions as, like I said, it functions as its own LEA. So it has its own set of books. So we have a charter fund, right? And we have one right now. It just, we don't manage it because there's nothing to be done with it. But Jeremy would be maintaining a set of books for a charter as well as the set of books for Auburn Union School District. So when you see the second interim budget, there would be a section on charter funds that he would then go through separate and apart, like their cafeteria funds, their
Everything.
but
It's
they're
just-
everything.
Yeah.
There's 2 LCAPs. So we write an LCAP for AUSD. There has to be an LCAP for that charter, and it's a separate LCAP. And that's a big thing to do. So I just want to be honest that there is a significant workload that comes with it. Obviously, there's a benefit, but we just have to weigh those things and what that looks like.
When you present on these things, will you also talk about what it looks like if we don't keep it and then what happens next? at that
Yeah.
site?
Those 3 options, kind of like keep it,
Yeah.
keep it, but change it to be something different than what it, has been. If we go towards the homeschool option, collapse it or whatever the term is, if we don't keep it, or leave it as it is right now and it just kind of sits until we are kind of forced to make a decision in 2028 because CD is going to ask us, what are you doing with your renewal?
And did you say the site?
Yeah.
Your question?
so-
So the site,
Oh, the site,
that's
sorry.
separate. So this charter is the Alta Vista Community Charter, and it's ephemeral. We have that. It's not the physical site. So we still have that. Our lease was at a 5-year lease that we signed with Blue Door? Oh, 3-year? Okay.
Yeah, but that's with Blue Door and they're utilizing the site itself, the school
Yeah.
itself.
So yeah, so they are still serving people in the community who are using those, you know, independent or the home study options or the hybrid charter options. But
And
that's totally separate from the discussion about the charter itself.
Yeah, we've talked about independent studies since independent study came up. There's short-term independent study and then there's long-term independent study. And we can do short-term independent study for students that are missing and recover attendance anywhere from 1 to 15 days. So that would definitely help out our district.
Yeah, and I was curious about that because I know that at my kids' previous school, whenever they were absent, somebody was like, hey, just so you know, if you're going to be out X amount of days, we can give you this packet and you can. And once I was aware as a parent, like, oh, this helps the district with ADA, I also have all these materials. It was great to know, but I haven't, and my kids have been sick a lot and missed a lot of school this year. So, and I haven't ever heard of independent study. So I just wonder, is that how well that's communicated? Is there somebody who kind of takes that on at each site or what is that? Yeah.
So I had to call my daughter out this week over at Skyridge, and the Skyridge voicemail actually says, if you are requesting homework from your teacher.
I get the homework,
yeah.
yes, but the independent study part, which is different, right? If they go on independent study, then the district recoups that ADA.
And we do have that CBO set up to, I think, 15 days.
that's
or
correct.
Yes,
total of
I'm just
5.
pointing out that it would be probably helpful at the sites to have somebody who's communicating that or overseeing it, or just a way for the community to know that. And have like an access point for that and someone who's tracking it, because then.
Okay, so if you're just asking the superintendent to kind of review that at our sites, make sure somebody's on top of it.
Well, just to let you know, so we have always had that, right? But each site was kind of using their own documentation. So in the fall this year, we worked with SOAS to make a common process documentation for short-term independent study across all sites. We probably should follow up, make sure they're now using those documents, but that we did that in the fall.
Yeah.
And then it's actually in the document that Jeremy attached to the reserves item, just below where he had talked about reserves on page 10, it talks about attendance recovery. And that's a change coming July 1st, 2025, just so you know. And similarly, we can recoup attendance for kids up to those 15 days, I believe also.
That's
Right.
correct.
Yeah. And that would be after the fact. So right now, independent study is, I know they're going to be gone and you get it ahead of time. And now as of July, we'll be able to say, oh, now we know the pool kids were sick for 3 days. So we're running an intersession during spring break come Monday and Tuesday, and we can recoup back to whatever days they were absent. So that's a whole new thing we're going to have to talk to schools about as well. So, and Jeremy's been going to a lot of stuff finding out about that. So there'll be more to come on the independent study, short-term independent study for sure.
So just one last comment. President Hull, I agree with you, and we've tried to, incorporate a charter into the district and it didn't work, end up costing us more money, every year. Not saying a model could work, but also I'd be interested, or curious to see if there's anybody out there, that would like to where we can use this charter for our advantage, as the authorizer. I don't know how to do that, how to go about do that. If or even if there's an RFP process, I'm unclear on that. But it's something that we have, and just to give it up, that could bring some kind of benefit. And I don't know how that looks, what that looks like, but if it's not going to be too much time to kind of look into that, and if there is any interest out there, in the community.
So you're asking to clarify, Jason, like transferring that charter to someone else who we would, a little bit like, I think the independent charter question, is that what you're asking? Like transferring to someone else and then becoming the oversight, but not the maintainer of the
Correct. So
program?
we'd be the, I think it's the word is the authorizer. We'd be the authorizer of it, where it wouldn't be the heavy workload on us. And, but there is some funding that can come back to us.
You can ask those questions of our new friend at CD.
Are there any other questions on the Alta Vista Community Charter School? Okay, moving on then to G, the federal executive orders. In short, there still aren't any hard, fast, we don't know exactly how things are going to be impacting us still. We still haven't got hard and fast guidance from CSBA or legal on things or actions that we need to take. We are seeing the federal Department of Education getting areas being cut. A lot of that isn't the departments that are impacting K through 12 schools right now. So we'll continue to monitor, continue to keep an eye out for CSBA and other resources. And then as things come down the pike, we'll reach out to our legal for guidance going forward. Okay, so moving to update on requests.
We started the MOU log. We talked about that last time. Log template's been created, kind of being reviewed for any necessary changes. As a new one comes in, new MOUs come in, we'll certainly add them. The backlog of going through all those and adding them will take some time, but we've started it, so in process, I guess, is the update on that. And then before the start of the next school year, we were going to work on research and drafting language on data breaches and look at that going out prior to data confirmation with families in the fall. So we're also working on that. There's nothing quite to come of that quite yet, but those are two things that we're working on at present. And I think those were the only two from last time. So I'm missing anything.
And then as far as new requests, I think we've got the question about reviewing for could we use that for independent study? What would that look like? Or I'm sorry, reviewing the independent study, make sure that we're doing that on the district standards. We talked about the charter school. Also, we talked about had some of those questions about how tech is used in the classroom itself and what sort of the practical knowledge is that will be included in the presentation next month. What are the requests that we have?
There's the board policy, little bit of research on ed code I'm going to do.
And then I have one new request too when you're done.
Sec here. Look really quick and make sure there wasn't anything else. Oh, we're gonna bring the resolution back in April for the reserve. We're moving the child nutrition update. We'll bring that back
April.
in April. All of items, that one was charter. I think that's it. What's yours, Jason?
My request is, there was a few board meetings back when we talked about the multi-payer fee schedule to stay in there, and you wanted to, if the decision was made to stay in there so we can be a voice, of the building of the plane, and just an update of how that's going and what conversation has inspired, and what kind of input are we able to provide.
And are we still expecting the wellness to be presenting for us in April?
Correct. And I'm talking to PCOE next week about that piece, and then kind of just nuts and bolts stuff. And then Kelly's been working with Gina and the wellness staff well prior to this to kind of gear up for April. That's the plan.
So the one request I had for them after the last time they presented is still interested in seeing what objective metrics can they show us that students who go to wellness have, that it has a positive effect on their academic performance. Or any effect, positive or negative, whatever that might be.
And I think we talked about maybe a little bit last time that might be a little hard to correlate, like going to wellness to reading scores, right? But certainly number of times in wellness to a reduction in continued needed breaks from class, office discipline referrals, right? So that's that kind of house diagram of like keeping them in the class more, they get more exposure, that kind of piece. So I think that we can probably certainly tease out. And then from there, but Johnny scored a 4 and now he scores a 6. Like that just might be hard data to correlate because there's a lot of factors.
Right.
Are there anything specific
Well,
you're thinking of?
Really what I asked, want to see, is there a correlation between going to wellness, particularly going there frequently, and their scores getting better or worse? You know, when I first asked this question, I didn't have a particular student in mind. I have a student in mind now that I know that was going to wellness multiple times a day for quite a while. And I don't think that this student's scores were getting any better. It was a lot of time out of the classroom. So, but again, that came after we first saw wellness come and present. So
Okay.
I'm just kind of curious, is there, you know, what is the impact, I guess, on our students?
Yeah, and I just want and I think when we talked about this before, I've maybe already said this, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I also just want to say that whatever skills are being built in a place like wellness, like it's its own measure. So yes, it's important that we're looking at like our academic measures, but those like coping skills and like what I would call like behavioral skills are separate skills that also are important and should be supported in a school.
Oh, absolutely. But I think if we're seeing improvements in those areas, we should also be seeing improvements.
But we
in
might not
classroom.
always that year. Like for some students, especially in the lower
I
grades, it
didn't
takes
specify I want to see in the year. I just want to see the metrics. If they can show me a track over 5 years and say, hey, you know what? It looks like they had a decline for 2, but now we're able to show that we followed this student through the 8th grade and now they're doing fantastic. I'd love to see that. So if they can show us that what they do has an impact, great. So I'm curious to see what that is.
I don't know if it's something that we can see or measure, but can we see over time, like students attending, whether their attendance there increases or decreases? How many times are they coming into the wellness center? Is it proving beneficial that now they don't need to because they've achieved these coping skills and now they're back in the classroom more? Or like, can we see any kind of trajectory
That's a good question too.
of students that way?
I think, you know, we saw some data on, you know, quite a few visits. But yeah, so
Right.
I guess what you're getting at is the students who go, do they tend to start going more frequently, or do we see most end up kind of tapering off as they develop these skills that wellness says they're helping us with?
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying that some skills might not get better. It might not mean that their reading gets better. Like there are kids who might not make progress in that area. And it could be that they need those skills to be targeted simultaneously. So maybe whatever is supporting them in wellness, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're getting the support they need with reading. And so I think it would just be hard to make that connection. You could look at that data, but you wouldn't necessarily know that one isn't influencing the other. You wouldn't know what other things that student needed to make improvement academically and whether or not they were getting those supports. They might be getting the wellness support, but they might not be getting, you know, whatever they need to improve their reading or improve their math or whatever other academic needs they might have.
Potentially. You know, but if, you know, people are sending their children to public school to be educated. So everything we do should be supporting education.
Right.
So
But
I'm curious to see, you know, can they show us how wellness is supporting education?
yeah, I'm just pointing out that
I hear you.
education is not just reading and math, it's also these other skills.
All sorts of social skills and things to do, but I think it's
Yeah.
not unreasonable to expect that if students are going to get help in those areas, that it's to help support academic goals as well. So I'm curious to see if they can show us that that is the case or not.
Any other new requests?
Think comments from you.
Okay. Well, it's already March, which is halfway through March, which blows my mind. But there's a lot going on and a lot of good stuff. I am really appreciative of all the people that were here tonight and presented on so many of those things. I think Auburn is so full of fantastic people that adults and kids alike, our parents and our teachers, all our staff that work together. So I want to thank, you know, kind of starting at the top with the 7-Eleven committee. Tom was here presenting, but he was one of a team of about well, between 7 and 11, which is why it's called the 7-11 committee. I think we have about 9 people represented. But the committee really put in so much thought and energy into that process. Kathy, who is our consultant, she works with 7-11 committees across, well, not just the county. I mean, she's down in the Bay Area, she's all over the state. And she was just commenting to them about how dedicated they were and how passionate they were about really making sure that their recommendations were in line with what would be good for Auburn and what would be really appreciated by the community. So very much appreciate their input. It was a great process. And it was good to meet them because some are parents in our district, but some are not. We just met, some retirees and they're fantastic people and it was great. So I really, really appreciate that committee. Skyridge, obviously, Christy, she's a little under the weather today. I thought she left after the grant process, and I saw her sitting there. I was like, oh, you should go. I know she wants to be here for it all, but she was feeling under the weather today, but you could tell even when she's presenting, she's just energized with all that's going on at the school. So many great things. The Falcon Friends is truly a powerful thing. Emily and I were able to visit sites just yesterday. We went to all 3 sites. We happened to be in TK when their Falcon Friend was there. And he was reading a book to them and the kids were just so interested and it was just adorable. And when he left, he's like, goodbye, TK, I'll see you next time. And all of them yelled, goodbye, big kid. And it was really adorable. So that was really cute. So I appreciated her. And I want to thank Dave for his presentation too. I know he's always here listening to us. Sometimes we make him get up there up front, but he did a fantastic job. And Dave just does phenomenal work with our technology department. He's training Mario. He's trained quite a few people because Dave's track record is that he trains people very well and then he trains them right out of a job here in Auburn and they get snatched up somewhere else. So we appreciate his work very much. He's a really good member of our team. We had some student participation in our LCAP PAC, which is called the Parent Advisory Committee, but this year has a student component as well. So we have a rep from each site that's either in 7th or 8th grade. 2 of our students are 7th graders, so they'll roll over next year and we'll keep having a rollover every year. They came this week to meet with me and just kind of get a lay of the land so that they can be at our meeting. It's a public meeting. Everyone's welcome there as well. It's on March 27th next week. Week after next at 5:30 in this room. And their job is to give feedback on the 3 goal areas that we have in the LCAP. And if anyone has looked at our LCAP, it's about 125 pages of pretty dense reading. But we talked about the LCAP. They asked great questions for about 30-40 minutes. And then they spent 20-30 minutes giving me the feedback they have already. I tasked them with going back to their schools as site representatives to talk to their peers. And they talked about the avenues through which they could do that they have at their school, like at Skyridge that Christy talked about, Safe School Ambassador. And so I'm really looking forward to them coming back in March and sharing with us along with our parents as well. So that's great. And it's been lovely. And then last but not least, we are in hiring season. It's springtime. Like Sarah was saying, you got to start early so you get good people who are a good fit for our district. We went to PCOE's job fair on Saturday. Kelly, myself, Kara Schwinn, our program specialist, and then Michelle Bunt, our HR manager. And we had a fantastic turnout. I don't know who we, paid at PCOE, but they gave us the prime spot by the door. So we caught everyone as they came in. It was 3 hours long. I couldn't talk by the end. I talked to so many people. My voice was hoarse, but it was fantastic and just really great people. So it was fantastic. That's all I got. Thank you.
Nothing from me this evening. It's 10 o'clock. Nobody wants to hear me talk.
I don't, I don't have anything either, but it's really great having these principal presentations. It's really great to get a lay of the other school sites and what's going on. So that was awesome.
Just real quick, want to thank our superintendent for giving me the site tours real quick. All did a whirlwind of all 3 of them. Got to see Dave at his headquarters, which was really interesting. It's kind of the brain trust of the entire district up there. If you ever get a chance to step in there and say hi to him. But I really enjoyed meeting all the teachers and the principals and all the students that I got to see there. It was a lot of fun.
All right, I guess I'll close this out. So just it's just a gratitude of thankfulness, for this whole board. When I heard earlier the report of the job fair, how there was tons of, I'll say tons, but there was quite a few that was actually seeking us out to work here, which is, I said it, a while back that this is the season of building, where people want to come work here, they want to come, start a career here. And so just kudos to all of you, just thankful for all your hard work, staff. And, it's just going to keep on getting better from here on out. Thank you.
All right, with that, it is 10:03 and this meeting is adjourned.